What's the time there, 5:30?
Yeah.
I call the meeting to order, 5:30. Some announcements. The West Newbury Community Choice Power Supply Program opt-out deadline is March 20th, and there'll be an information session next week at the select board meeting at 5:30. Also one on March 13th, through the Sage Center, their Lunch and Learn series, that'll be at 12 o'clock. Call for volunteers, there's a complete list of openings on the webpage from volunteer tab. Jim, do you want to give an update on election papers or?
Yeah, so papers.
2.5 weeks?
2.5 weeks, to turn in papers. However, the deadline to take out papers is, the Thursday prior to the 17th. So just put my calendar. So if anyone's interested in pulling papers for a local office, you have to pull papers by Thursday, March 13th at 5 p.m. And then papers have to be returned by that next Monday, March 17th again. So far, there's a couple open seats that no one pulled papers for at all. Planning board, housing authority, water commission. A couple people have indicated they're not running, but I haven't heard back from other incumbents, so.
Who's up for re-election on planning board?
Tom?
Tim Cronin?
Tim Cronin, thank you.
No,
Tim-
he's not running.
He's not running, he's one of the few that, then Marge Peterson's not running for housing authority again, so those two are open.
Okay, thank you. Regular business, item A is public comment. Anybody here want to make a public comment? You can just say your name and address.
This is a form of fair. Amy Land, 17 Browns Lane. I had written to you before and I couldn't make the meeting, but I was just wanting to make some comments on the road races that we have through town. The last time there was a change, but all the signage was directed to our street. Wasn't what I was intending, is that we're in an area where you have a dead end and there's not proper signage in adequate time, and it's confusing signage where you can have arrows, but then on the other side, there's an arrow going the other way, so you don't know what it means. So, you know, and when you're blocked in, you're at a dead end, you can't get out. And then we have multiple road races, and my neighbors and everything like that. I think it would be fair to have, you'd said on the document that it was a week ahead of time, but I didn't see that there. But they don't do a week ahead of time for us at all. And I think it's only fair if people make a plan, they can understand what the route is and how they're gonna be blocked. And I also think, you know, these are companies that are doing this, that they could possibly have, I know you have police officers certain places. They could have somebody, because they put the porta potties on our street and then they run up and down our road too, which is fine. We always know the road race, there's a porta potty shows up. But it'd be nice to have somebody there to guide if we need to get out, to say, because it won't move, people won't move, and then they aren't nice to you. And I understand there's a race, but sometimes we have urgent needs too that we need to. So I'd like to have a little better attention to that. And my neighbors had expressed that as well. And that's why I came forward. So,
Thank you.
right, thanks.
Did either of you have any questions?
Oh,
Sort of, yeah.
Why don't you go, Chris?
Browns Lane, they don't run down Browns Lane, they're going across, right?
they're on Middle Street. Or I mean Garden Street, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
because I thought I remember seeing the porta potties.
Well, we're a dead end, and then they park the buses on Coors Lane. And then there's a big congregation, people warm up and down our street too. You know, because it's a dead end, and they have their
The race
headphones on.
starts?
No, it's, I don't know what it is, but there's usually a bus, and then there's people there that are running.
Well, that is strange, because that's not the intention, is to have anybody.
Not every race does that, but at least I think 2 of them do.
Do you happen to remember? I know it's in the email, which one it was, but I don't.
Well, that was I can go back and kind of look at it. It all depends on the route that they take, I guess, because sometimes they don't completely block us. Sometimes they go, you know, up middle, come down Garden, and then turn on Rogers, and then find their way into Turkey Hill, I believe. Or sometimes they come all the way up Indian Hill, come down Garden, and then they'll go probably, I can't remember, because it's changed, but it always, majority of the time it blocks us in, so we can't even get out of our
And that's
area.
not the intent, because we do ask if there are any road closures, and we've been deliberate, but there was one race that I mentioned to the board last year, where they took part of Middle Street and they put cones in the middle of one of the
It's
lanes.
evolved, yes.
And they're not supposed to be doing that, so we're gonna have to be looking at these a
Okay.
little.
So it's evolved where before, when these would go on, the police would be there and we weren't even allowed to drive. They'd make us park our car 2 blocks down and walk to our house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's gotten a little better with it, you know, there's usually a directional, and the police officers have been very, very good that are on there, it's just you can't even get to the road because everybody's lined up and no one will move for you. You know, it's not like you have to go out all the time, but if you have a pressing matter,
Would it be possible to put the particular issues in writing?
Yeah, she
Because-
did, she did,
oh,
it's an
she-
email that I forwarded to you, it's been a few months since that.
It
Okay,
has,
So I get our
yeah.
meeting.
Okay.
and you guys said the link was broken, kind of,
Okay.
and then I saw it was on the agenda, because I was gonna say, oh, I'll do it, and, because I
Right.
usually work evenings on
Yeah,
Thursdays,
okay,
so.
so, no, that's, I mean,
So I'll
this
record
is
that.
something we ought to address, because,
Yeah.
you know, we specifically, you know, need to protect residents from.
I think so.
From being impacted,
Kindly,
yeah,
just kindly, I
Right,
people
right.
understand, I just think that it
yeah,
gets frustrating when it's not. They're not very nice.
yeah,
And the directions are very poor. Newbury Port has them up way ahead of time
yeah,
and they don't make any sense because I can't tell which arrow I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Saying which direction it's coming from. I think it'd just be better that way because we love the fact that they love our town and
yeah, yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
nice
but-
run.
But still, they need to respect the fact that people.
I think so.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Any other questions, just send it to me and I'd be happy to clarify it a little bit. All right,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
awesome, thanks.
Any other public comments? Thank you. So town manager updates.
Hazard mitigation plan was approved by FEMA, that restores the town's eligibility for federal grants. There's a paperwork in the packet, but as you know, that's a long process, so it's good to get the official approval. Next update, the consultant proposals were received for the open space and recreation plan update. The review process is underway. I included in the packet the RFQ that had gone out that sets out in detail the review process that involves a 5-member working group that the conservation agent is facilitating. There were 3 proposals received. Both of the price proposals were within a couple of $100 of each other. And both were at or below $50,000. So I've updated the amount in the proposed article request to reflect that. And so that'll play out over the next couple of weeks. I would expect they'll interview both firms and make a selection. We should have someone under contract. Obviously, our ability to sign a contract would just cover the initial period of time up until May 1st, by which point the town meeting article would have been acted upon and the contract could be extended to cover the complete work.
Were the 2 proposals consistent in what was outside the 25, what they felt was necessary outside the 25,000?
I didn't look at them that closely. I looked at them both. They're both from very reputable firms, and they look to be, you know, they look to be good, but I didn't read them closely. So it's Clay, a member of the Park and Rec Commission, and 3 members of the Open Space Committee are the working group, and they will make a recommendation to Caitlin Parker as procurement officer, who will then work with me on the contract terms.
Great.
Did we already fund 25 of it?
Well, we did, but because that was CPA, that's gonna need to be part of the article request because of the,
None has been spent yet, so we felt like it was a better idea. to
Start
just
over.
not- Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great.
Middle Street Bridge, construction updates. We have a, construction update, meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I was out there earlier today just to get a look. They did the tree removal, so it looks wide open. I don't know if you've been down there, but
Down
it looks very different.
Mhm.
And got a chance to talk to the lead contractor on site. It seemed like a, you know, really good operation. They've got the construction trailer out there. They haven't started any work other than the tree work, but we'll have a better idea tomorrow of what they anticipate for timing.
Well, they have done a little more, and residents should know you can no longer even walk a bike through it.
Yes.
Okay, that was gonna be my question.
They were doing up the fencing
Yeah, it
actually.
was
while I was
lasting
down
through
there
the
today.
fence,
Yeah.
and they let me cut through.
there. Last resident to go. Great.
So once they're at a point where there's something kind of visually interesting, you know, we'll get some photos of that and put something on the website, but seems to be off to a good start.
Great.
And then some other just miscellaneous updates. Page Pipe Safe Crossing, we're at the 75-100% design stage with DOT. We got comments back first thing this morning. There was nothing significant in there, a couple of housekeeping items, so TEC is going to be working on those. So we can move forward, bid doc to put that out to bid for construction this summer.
You skipped over the comprehensive plan?
Oh, the one stop, yeah. So, yeah, I had included in the packet the draft expression of interest. It's a very limited, just 500 characters. So I think, yeah, this is actually, an item for discussion. There's some constraints on the grant that raise some concerns in my mind in terms of timing. Really in terms of timing, because if we applied for the grant, we wouldn't get the funds under contract until at the earliest, probably November. And it would be, some amount of time after that, even if we have a contractor pre-selected, which is its own set of issues. The soonest we would have someone under contract would be probably December, and the funds would need to be fully expended, the grant funds, by June of 2027, which is just 18 months. And that really, in my experience, is not a sufficient time for a, comprehensive planning effort, which I think really takes 2 to 2.5 years or even more. So I think, with that said, it's a significant amount of funding available through the grant. So, I think it's, I'd like to find a way to make the grant work rather than looking for the taxpayers to fund the total cost of a comprehensive plan, which is well, low 6 figures. So one thing that I met with the town planner earlier this week. One approach some towns have taken is to seek a grant for an initial, basically, visioning session as kind of a precursor to the full master planning effort, which would be a smaller level of effort. We could seek a grant for that, get that done, and then the following year apply for a second one-stop grant to do the complete master plan. So that was something that, she looked into. Some other towns have taken that approach, and that might be a way to basically still have the grant fund most of the work, but not be so hemmed in with that, 18-month timeline.
So would that improve or decrease your chances of getting the second round if, to get?
That's a good, there's a couple of information sessions, we can ask those questions. They haven't had those yet, so I'd be guessing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one other approach is if we're putting up 10%, could we just start with our 10% earlier than it would take to receive the grant funds?
We could, but we'd only be able to contract for the amount that we have appropriated. So, we'd be engaging a vendor for, a much more limited scope. And while there are some firms that have all of the necessary kind of professional competencies within, under one roof, many of the master plan consultants is a multidisciplinary team where they might have a transportation engineer, they might have, they're different specialists. So they're not going to assemble that team for a scope of 17.5. So
but if they're in that business, they already have the team.
Yeah.
Largely pre-assembled. They already know who they're like, who they would prefer to work with. So,
right, but those resources probably wouldn't fit within this smaller amount of money.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering if there's, if you look at it sort of a set of modules or, a set of tasks that have to be accomplished, if there are 1 or 2 tasks that wouldn't require all the competencies, and so you can get it started. Maybe that's dreaming.
I think there's there's a few different ways to go about it. So the expression of interest isn't due back until I believe it's March 24th. So there's still, several weeks. So this might be a good thing to add to the agenda for maybe next week, and we can talk about a little more in terms of what route we want to take.
Yeah, I'd almost be in favor of having a larger share from the town in exchange for a more reasonable schedule. If we were to pay for the visioning up front, for example, and then both of the rest of it, but. Okay.
Well, it seems to me that embarking on comprehensive plan should be looked at as it should be viewed as a way to engage more people in the community too. When it's launched, it should be launched in a way that reaches out to as many people in town as possible. And because, most of us who were involved in the comprehensive plan in '99 are aging out. And there's younger people, that ought to be following and hopefully sort of taking interest. I think that it should be really an aggressive effort to try to pull new people in.
I agree.
I mean, think about it, I don't recall, Wendy, were you?
I lived here, but I wasn't part of it.
Okay, because Chris was, and I was engaged, and that sort of was the beginning, or near the beginning of our getting involved with helping, with the town.
Mhm.
And, so it's gone on for 25 years plus at this point, so that the next round of people needs to come in. This is an opportunity to grab it, hopefully.
Sure. Yeah, other updates?
Yeah, some other miscellaneous updates, so page pipes, Dave, we've got the DOT comments, we'll work on those, another, update on the Route 113, we got a note from TEC earlier today that the, surveying contractor that they have, for the library town hall crossing, have some time free up for next week, so they're actually gonna start survey work on Monday, which is pretty exciting. We've been, working with, the town planner on the Major Boy Drive, that's anticipated to be brought forward for public acceptance at a future town meeting. I'm not sure if that'll be fall or spring. But there was some discussion at last week's planning board meeting about potential changes to the landscaping of the cul-de-sac. So I met with the planner to make sure they understand that Butch and this board really need to be at the table for those discussions. And if it is expected to become public infrastructure and something the town will own, in perpetuity, we certainly have an interest in what's being considered there. And two other things, or three other things briefly. We got some, I don't want to overstate it, some bad news yesterday. The fridge at Page School has failed. So they are renting external fridge that's parked right outside the kitchen with an extension cord, and they're running back and forth. So Jonathan was the condenser that's failed, and the vendor said that based on the fridge construction that the condenser is basically working too hard, so their recommendation is to replace the whole fridge. So this is the walk-in, big thing. So Jonathan's looking to get quotes, and I told him once he has quotes, we'd be presumably looking for reserve fund transfer for that, because it's definitely going to be over the threshold for the $10,000 threshold. So Brian and I went over there today to take a look at that. Brian and I had a pre-scheduled meeting today. We toured around some of the facilities that are proposed for warrant articles. So that was really interesting. You'll hear more about that at next Thursday's meeting, where some of those will be reviewed. But we took a look at the Garden Street Station, the salt shed with the roof, structural shoring up, as well as the water building and the HVAC improvements that are proposed there. And he also gave me a tour of the work he's been doing to retrofit one of the bays of the water building into his woodworking studio. It's very impressive. I'll put together some photos for next week's meeting, but it's really neat. He's done a fantastic job out there. Very, very functional, very practical, and very economical. It's really impressive what he's gotten done. And then finally, we got some really interesting news. We were in a meeting yesterday, myself and Christine, with a couple of members of the CCRC, Rick and Lisa and Liz, and we're talking about, among other things, culverts and things. And as we were in that meeting, we got a note from MVPC. I had reached out to them a week or two ago. We'd heard about a program actually through Elisa that MVPC was offering to support communities looking to improve the mapping of their culverts and stormwater infrastructure, which, as you know, has been on our to-do list for a number of years. And turns out that, Ipswich River Watershed Association recently applied for it and received funding from DER to do culvert mapping in, 5 communities, and that West Newbury is one of those 5
Oh,
communities.
that's great.
So this could, so we just had initial correspondence, with, through MVPC with, Ipswich River Watershed Association, but we'll be setting up a meeting in the next, probably in the next 2 weeks or so with them. And, that could be a real opportunity to get, get a lot of that mapping done, grant funded. So that was kind of a nice opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. So I see bad news then good news. I see what you did there. All right, so moving on to department updates and discussion, we have a presentation of the FY24 audit and federal single audit from Roselli Clark and Associates. Hello.
Hello.
That's good. I'm gonna approach this and kind of give a highlight of everything, and then if I cover something you want to know more about at the end, feel free to ask, or if I miss something. But we'll tackle it that way. I'm gonna start with the financial statements, which I believe you all were given a copy of.
Yeah.
Starting on page 10, is a net position statement. This is a full accrual statement. It includes the pension liabilities and the OPEB liabilities and the debt liabilities. Items that for a large part just, and capital assets. Items that for a large part, you all kind of look to in the future because DOR in the state is more short-term costs, not long-term cost base. So, just to kind of put some context into this, these numbers might look a lot different than, say, the DOR balance sheet or whatever, and I'll give some explanation as to that. But what I'd point out is the net position section at the bottom. Oh, there you go. Okay, the net position statement section at the bottom is really what somebody would refer to as fund balance or retained earnings. And as you can see, there's just under $36 million of net position in total in the town. Of that, 31 million of it belongs to governmental. Governmental is pretty much all of your activity except for water and OPEB. So any general town functions and operations are really there, servicing. If you look of that 31 million at the top, net investment in capital assets is about 24.2 million of it. That reflects your capital assets, less depreciation, less the debt you owe against those capital assets still. So a good chunk of it is fixed assets, which is normal. Most communities run into this. Your unrestricted that you see there is of a negative 80,000. I want to explain that a little bit because the town overall is financially very healthy. So someone may say, well, what's the 80? Why is it negative? That is a result of accumulating those long-term items. That your debt liability, your comps to absence liability, pension and OPEB liabilities, those all total about 6.4 million. So those liabilities reduce fund balance, and that's where it gets reduced out of. And is creating the negative. Honestly, you can kind of tell how well the town's doing, because if you go into a lot of other communities, they have like millions of dollars in negative there because they haven't built up the surplus to absorb those costs. Additionally, of that 36 million, 5 million of it belongs to the water fund, and 3 million of that is the net assets. Net investment in capital assets, I should say. Jumping down, yeah. The net position for the governmental funds increased about 1.4 million. So that was a very healthy year.
From last year.
Yeah, from last year, and the water went up just over 500,000. So both functions, showed positive operational results for the year.
And that reflects increases in capital assets or primarily, or,
It would be a combination, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of capital asset items, I think, going on this year for the general fund. Or governmental funds, your water fund had a fair amount of activity,
yeah,
so yes. The issue though is not as much as you might think, because the way that math works is, say you built a $2 million addition onto the water. If you use debt, you put about $2 million of debt on.
yeah.
So they would kind of offset, so it would be a little bit, I would say it's really through, just general operations, but like, for example, one of the things that capital project, 600,000, that was a transfer that the town made into a capital project fund for a specific project. So the money had been raised or, from free cash, but it's still sitting there unused, so that's 600,000 of the 1.4 right there. That as that project goes forward, it'll shift, but will probably be recorded as a capital asset. Good.
Thanks.
If you wanna go, there's 3 pages into page 13. I think it's gonna be, right there, actually 12. Okay, so this is the governmental funds balance sheet. This is a modified accrual basis of accounting, which matches very closely to what you report to DOR, matches very closely to how the town's books are maintained. That total column is effectively kind of the first column of the other statement. Plus or minus any accrual adjustments. So as you can see, you're gonna see things broken out into areas you're more familiar with, like general fund and community preservation. There's that capital project fund, which was a new fund for this year. With putting the 600,000 in, it tipped it over the requirement to break it out as its own fund. Library trust fund money, and then non-major governmental funds is basically your special revenue funds, which is revolving funds, receipts reserve funds, grant funds, gift funds, and then most of the trust funds would all be in there. The one real difference regarding trust funds and the general fund is your stabilization funds actually get reported in the general fund under GASB. With the state, they're reported in the trust funds.
And the Affordable Housing Trust, where would that fall?
Let's see here, let me just make sure. That one should. There's a fiduciary file, make sure it's not there. That one would fall under me.
Okay.
So it would be part of that restricted 992,000, because it's been, the reason that's restricted is almost all of that money that's in non-major, it either has grant restrictions as to how you use it, or you've adopted uses for that money that can only be used for certain things. Okay, so one of the things I'd like to point out on this is the unassigned fund balance you see there of just about 4.6 million in the general fund. Yeah, right there. That is basically, kind of that's your surplus. Like if you look above the committed, the assigned, that's like your encumbrances, your articles. That 4.6 is pretty much what is available, to be spent. It's got stabilization money in there. If you pull the stabilization amount out of there, you're almost left with your starting point for free cash. Just to kind of pull that into kind of a circle of where that is. Now, of that four
When you say stabilization, are you referring to all stabilization accounts?
Yes.
Or, okay, so,
yeah.
okay, right.
Of that 4.6 million, that represents about 20, can you go to the next page for me? And one more after this, sorry. Okay, right there, see total expenditures in the general fund, 17.9 million. So your undesignated, which is your surplus, is about 25% of your total entire year's expenditures for general fund operations, which I would point out is a very good ratio. You could basically go a quarter of the year with just what you have in surplus. It's one of the reasons you're a AAA community, which you still maintain. And if you were to go back and look at total fund balance for the general fund, that ratio goes up to 39%. So, those are good signs of the financial stability of where the town's at right now. You're able to absorb any peaks and valleys, much easier. If you scroll down just a little bit, I can talk about, so the fund balance numbers are here at the bottom, the ending. Community preservation has about 3.7 million of money in it. The capital projects, as I said, was new this year for the 600,000. The library trust has just under 1.6 million, and the non-governmental funds has 912. So if you look at the number right above it, you can see what it was the year before. And the number above that is the change for the year. So your general fund, basically, you almost broke even at a negative 172,000. Community preservation was almost even. The 600,000, like I said, was a transfer in. The library trust, most of that 183 you're gonna find is, if you go up to investment income recovered quite significantly for everybody last year. Most of 24, you could still get a 5% CD or T-bill. So after kind of a blip, 22, 23, it recovered quite significantly. We're kind of down to about 4% now for those things, with the Fed lowering the interest rates, but again, if somebody took a year CD or a long-term investment at a 5% 6 months ago, you're still earning 5% on it. So I would expect that your investment income, because if you look, yeah, you took in $750,000 just from investment, from banks and the market. The residents in town doesn't have to pay for it to cover expenses. So that's very good. Overall, so cash and investment holdings for the town are at 21.7 million. And of that number, 9.2, so about 40%, 40% of it is what we would classify as investments. So the town is sitting on a fair amount of basic cash holdings. It's not heavily involved and invested in the market right now, or at least as of June of 24. The town's bonded debt decreased by 50,000. That's in direct alignment with the amortization of the debt that was expected. At year end, the water fund was holding a $3.2 million bond anticipation note, which is short-term debt. At some point, that'll either be paid down with some water rate money or bonded for long-term. For long-term debt, the governmental funds were down to $10,000 and you're making your last payment. So the only debt, unless something happens here in 25, the only debt coming into 26 will be in the water fund relative to bonds. And the water fund long-term had 1.5 in it. So overall water debt, short and long-term, was about 4.75 million. And the other thing I would point out, if you scroll in a couple more pages for me, keep going. Kind of been talking about it in between here, but that's water. That would be directly correlating. Those numbers would all match to column 2 of that net position statement. So we've kind of already talked about it. If you keep going, keep going. So that's operations. Going. Okay, and then here is your fiduciary funds. So there's your OPEB trust fund. You're holding 3.1, almost 3.2 million in there at the end of the year. And then private purpose trust funds are a special breakout, those would be monies that are reserved for use with, scholarships. They're not to benefit the town, they're to benefit the students, if they're there for, say, assistance for the poor or needy. That would be that would be why those are classified there, private purpose versus public purpose. Any questions on the financials? That was kind of the highlight of it.
You mentioned the 30% ratio.
Yeah.
Is there a danger in that ratio being too high? You know, having too much?
Not from, the rating agencies and the financial world. I would say, potentially the question would be if it gets too high. Someone might ask, why is there so much there?
Right.
You know, like, where did it come from and did it really need to come from there? So that's probably honestly it's great to have the surplus, but there needs to inherently be a justification for it. And I would say honestly, 30% is not a high number. It's just higher than most communities can, you know, maintain and attribute. But when you think about some things that we've gone through, you know, we had the .com crash and we had COVID and we had the mortgage crash. I mean, those things come out of nowhere. And, you know, a lot of them seem to kind of happen in the spring. So what you've got is all of a sudden, you know, say all development almost immediately stops, all the licensing and permit revenue for your current year drops. But at that point, you've already put together your budget for next year. And so, you know, it kind of snowballs when it happens anytime after January, where there's a couple of years. So when you factor those things in, 30% is not a lot just to ensure that you can maintain services. Anything else? Okay. So one of the things I'll talk about is the single audit report, which is the covers as federal awards. You're not used to seeing that. That is a report that the federal government requires under uniform guidance for when any grant recipient expends more than $750,000 of federal funds in one fiscal year. So normally you don't have that much in federal grants. Not a huge surprise, we'll push it over as ARPA. If you want to scroll down, there's a schedule about halfway through. Right there. Scroll down just so we get the, So if you look, your total federal expenditures were $885, almost $86,000. The threshold for that number, as I said, is $750,000. About halfway down that page, the coronavirus state and local federal fiscal recovery funds, that's your ARPA funds, and that was 814,000 of it. So obviously that's what triggered it. In looking at it, it looks like you were carrying about 170,000 of unused ARPA funds into FY 25. So that shouldn't be enough to require another single audit unless you get some other large federal grant from something. So this is probably kind of a one and done.
Don't see that coming.
Yeah.
We don't see that coming right now.
Yeah, every once in a while, I get towns that are like, oh yeah, you know, we applied, we got a brand new fire truck for $750,000 and it's a federal grant. It's like, okay, well, now you need a single audit, you know. So I don't take anything for granted of where it might come from. What I am pleased to say though is if you go through it, so what that means is we have to test a certain percentage of the federal grant expenditures as what we call major program testing. The Fed gives us a checklist and we have to go through and make sure everything's in alignment with that. Obviously, ARPA was the only one that triggered it, being most of it, and we had no findings relative to how the town is maintaining and operating the ARPA funds. So, you know, a clean report. So that was good. The last bit is there was a letter to governance that I provided you. I'll just, it's a lot of just kind of like we're required to just report back. Towards the end, there were a couple of notes. One of them was a rehashing of the 25% and the 30% excess. A couple of the other ones above and beyond that. So your OPEB liability is 90% funded right now. That's the highest it's been in 3 years with all the market dips and stuff. At one point, I think about 5 years ago, you were 100%. So you're almost back to that point. And being even at 97%, relative to cities and towns, you're right at the top. Most of them are still working at it and will be for a while. And you can, there's no real short-term deadline to fund that. But moral of the story is, for what's been calculated by the actuary as a liability, that 300 or that $3 million pretty much covers it all. The pension liability, on the other hand, is kind of a different animal, which you all don't control. You're part of the Essex County Retirement System. It's a separate entity. They work with PARAC, the state agency, and actuaries. They figure out what the town's liability is. By law, you have to be fully funded by 2040. Most of the systems are a little less than that to give them a cushion. And then they figure out an annual assessment that you all get, and you have to kind of work into your budget. Essex County is not in the top as far as funding goes. They're mid to bottom. So what we kind of warn our clients about with these things is the funding mechanism, the funding schedules are kind of around 2036 right now on average for a lot of them. Surprisingly, it seemed like a long time away, not that long ago, but 2036 is only, 11, 12 years from now. And they're gonna have to make sure that gets made up. So, and right now, honestly, stock markets are kind of near an all-time high. And those, as we know, do this. So while I don't have a crystal ball, 12 years is a long time to go with no market correction when you're at a high. So that would also kind of put this process. What I would praise the town for is you have a pension stabilization fund with about 400,000 in. Now, overall, that's not a huge bite into that, but what's nice about the pension stabilization fund is it'll give you the ability in the future for, if all of a sudden one year that spikes, you don't necessarily have to like build it into your budget immediately. Like you could use some of that 400 to kind of smooth it out. As long as you keep that 400,000 in a stabilization fund, you control that. You send it when you want. If you don't find you need it in the last year of the assessment, you could just budget 400,000 less and use it then. But it's not a bad thing to have. I just warn everybody that over the next decade or so, you might see that retirement assessment creep up. As the deadline starts coming up for them, you're gonna much short, if you've got I've thought, man, if you had a $40 million pension liability, well, if you got 40 years to raise it, okay, you got a lot of time to like do that. But if all of a sudden you get to 11 years left and you still got to collect, 15 to 20 million of it, okay, now that becomes a lot shorter. Now they can't stretch it out. So it could be a budget item to pay attention to. And the last thing I would point out in the last bullet is, we've been in here and we've worked with the town on a number of things. As of this year, we have cleared all prior bullet points of things to be improved on. We have little things here and there that we talk to the department heads about, hey, you do this, but as far as you'll see, like, there really isn't anything to report back of, oh, hey, you guys really have to like fix this now. I don't have any comment like that for you, so congratulations.
Congratulations to our town accountant, I would say.
So that's it for what I had. I'll open up the board here if there's any other areas or questions.
Chris, you've been very quiet.
No, I looked at the report and my eyes glazed over and I read the summary.
Honestly, if you want, I mean, for what it is, for non-accountants, that first like 10 pages, which management discussion analysis, that's really what that's for, is to kind of generalize things a little bit, put a narrative to it instead of just a bunch of numbers. So yeah, if you were gonna focus on anything in particular, I'd say make sure you get that first 10 pages in, and it gives a nice summary.
Well, that in the conclusion, you have no findings, no open issue.
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm looking at.
Rick, did you have any?
Nope, all in all, sounds, pretty shiny. Yeah, it's good.
Angus or Jenny, did you have any?
No, just.
Thank you for the presentation. This was very user friendly, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tried, so thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what page we're on? I guess I have to go back.
115.
115.
Right, so the next item under department updates is an update from Chris and Angus's attendance at the February 25th Whittier NECC working group meeting. Right?
It's like Chris, it's just about you.
Well, we know that that's you. So which one of you wants to?
I'll start and
Yeah.
then Chris can supplement. So we attended a lunch meeting on Tuesday. It was, there were representatives there from, I believe, 10 of the 11 Whittier communities. It was, you know, we went into it, I think, a little skeptical because all we had received was a pretty superficial, what they referred to as executive summary, but I don't really think it was an executive summary of.
We acknowledged it wasn't front with us afterwards.
Yeah. So, you know, whereas we've been hoping to receive the Donahue Institute report, and I'd say initially, you know, Chris and I were sitting next to each other, we're a little bit like, okay, well, where's this gonna go? But as far as I'm concerned, it really turned around. I think Dennis DeZaglio, who they brought in to facilitate the process, I think did a nice job going around the table, getting people talking. And, you know, I think it was still fairly superficial in terms of the outcome. But he basically was able to get every community representative to say that they are favorable to the idea of a partnership between Whittier Tech and Northern Essex. It was kind of the first round of discussion, and to a head, every single person felt that they'd heard enough. There was enough there over this last several months of process to think that that was going to be an opportunity and something with you know, something to work toward. And then there was some additional discussion about kind of the continuum of what that relationship could look like, and they had outlined following the prior meeting we'd had a month or so back. They reiterated kind of at a very high level, 4 different types of how that partnership could look, from kind of really totally distinct but with shared campus all the way to a fully integrated single new institution and a couple of continuum in between. And they went around and kind of, you know, got people talking about where on the spectrum they felt, you know, the opportunity lay. And they were clear that the further to the right, meaning the more consolidated, the more opportunity there may be for non-traditional forms of financing because of opportunities available to higher ed that are not available to, you know, to Whittier. You know, I think just about everybody said some variation of, you know, we really don't have enough information on what this means in practice to really give an opinion. But with that said, you know, Dennis kind of pushed everyone, and it seemed like the general consensus was more toward the right, to like, you know, maybe 2.5 to 3.5. Like, it seemed like there was a lot.
Between what, 3 and 4 overall.
Yeah.
Which was very surprising.
It was, I think, pretty surprising, yeah.
Meaning what, between 3 and 4?
More of a, it'd be one institution, one name, one campus, you know, fully shared. versus potentially having two separate campuses on the same site.
So for instance, with some shared resources like security, or it notably didn't mention administration, which I thought, I'm sure you noticed that as well. But you know, more toward a really integrated, rather than just two side by side. So another ingredient they rolled out at a very, you know.
Isn't that contrary to what it was Donahue Institute, to their executive summary said, didn't?
I'm not sure, I read it a week ago, so I can't really remember what it said. I remember thinking it was very superficial.
Yeah, okay.
But they say this Donahue Institute report's gonna be a 90-page, you know, pretty bulky
I
report.
just looked at the executive summary for that, and I thought.
Yeah, that's how I
I
got it.
Yeah, and I thought
Yeah.
they went to the other
Time
direction.
out, I'm gonna clear it. That's not an executive summary of the Donahue report.
Okay,
Lane told, we was standing there
That's what they
afterwards.
labeled
Yeah, they didn't get it, so
Yeah,
Lane
okay.
was in panic mode and had to put something together
okay.
to present. It clearly is not the Donahue report.
Okay, it seemed
executive
like
summary.
pretty superficial.
It was, we
Yeah,
just couldn't believe it.
But what it was the other side, it was suggesting the separate.
It was
you know,
between two and
same-
three.
Same chunk of real estate, but two separate campuses.
That was in the middle,
Some shared-
everything
yeah,
shifted
yeah,
to the
okay.
right, is let's integrate
Okay, all right.
one full campus was the sense, but
Okay.
everybody's suggesting that without seeing the report, which, how do you do that?
Yeah,
So that was very strange.
yeah.
But there were a couple of very notable takeaways. Well, first, I started to say one thing they introduced for the first time, and it was at a very high level, very conceptual, was they had a aerial view of the Northern Essex campus and roughly 13.5 acres that they felt they could comfortably kind of make available to Whittier. So they had kind of a very conceptual, I won't really call it a site plan, that's what it was, but it was, that overstates it. I mean, it was really just an illustrative concept. But that was kind of neat because that was the first time that there'd been any like discussion of potential physical layout. But the other thing that was quite notable, as I know you all know, that when MSBA accepted or invited Whittier to participate in the program this year, it was contingent on receipt of a letter by July 1st, signed by, or a letter from each municipality committing to certain things, including an openness to amend the regional agreement. And for the very first time in this whole process, Mayor Barrett expressed an openness to that.
Mhm.
And I think it was like a bit of a aha moment, like I think everyone in the room was like, okay,
Yeah,
We're-
might happen.
you know, we're making headway here. You know, she obviously qualified that it's gotta be in the best interest of her constituents and.
How did she phrase that?
Not suitable. But anyway, so, you know, she's gonna be looking out for her constituents, of course, but definitely felt that there was enough there to suggest there could be win-win outcomes. There was the notable absence from the meeting of Rowley, but there was a kind of agreed follow-up with some people in the room who have some relationships there to engage them and hopefully pull them into it, because the point was made that, with the regional agreement structured how it is, with, you know, the need for unanimous agreement, as well as the MSBA process needs this letter from all 11 cities and towns. You know, they're really, you know, we've got to get everybody kind of aligned on this. So one thing, we'll have another meeting in about a month. Chris and I will attend, and Dennis is going to put together a draft of what this letter to MSBA may look like, so we can start to get that in circulation with this board, and the other communities can do the same thing with their boards and councils. Because Chris made the point that, you know, July 1st is going to come up very quick, and that's a really important deadline of the MSBA process. So I did ask the question. There was some discussion about the need for another feasibility study, and some discussion of orders of magnitude, what that might cost. It could be on the order of $2 million or more. And I had asked, you know, Maureen whether there was going to be, whether we should expect to see something in the FY26 Whittier budget to help pay for that. And I had asked her that before a couple of months ago, and she said no. She gave the same answer. She said, no, that's not going to be part of next year's budget. She felt that they had some money in their excess and deficiency that they need, or stabilization that they may be able to draw from. We'll be, you know, curious to understand that, because if they are accepted into the MSBA process next December, they're gonna have a finite timeline to do a feasibility study, and if they're not putting anything in their FY 26 budget to get money for that, we just, you know, we'd like to understand that they have a clear plan of how they're actually gonna pay for that. But I think in general, it definitely represented forward progress, but I would love to hear Chris's nuance on that, because he was listening the whole time and taking a lot of notes, so.
You pretty summed it up pretty well. I mean, I was blown away that the Donahue report wasn't ready for the meeting. And Angus at the prior meeting had requested we have it at least a week, I think you even said 10 days
Yeah,
in advance, and then they gave us this executive summary.
and that was only because I emailed them on Friday to say.
And so I gotta wonder what's going on. It seems like there's a problem. I don't know what it, so that was very disappointing. The only subtle modification I would make, you said the April Mayor was open to the possibility. I don't think she was open. I think she's conceding that that might be the only path forward. It wasn't a warm embrace in any fashion.
There.
Well, we'll take that. A yes is a yes.
But then the next glitch is we've gotta get Rowley back in.
Yeah, but do you think they'll be more willing to do it if they know everybody else is on board?
Their beef previously, they mentioned in those working sessions we had before this group started was a lack of ability to change the agreement. So this will be
Yeah.
the only option for it. So hopefully they will come back to the table with that. We'll see.
Yeah. Great.
You know, we were kind of all synced together, if they, you know, everybody doesn't play ball.
That's what people are finally starting to realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. The next item is board commission and committee updates. Our first item is review of the draft River Road MVP action grant scope. Christine Wallace and Butch Hills here.
Butch is on for the coffin culverts, but he can answer questions too.
And we also have,
Angus, you wanted to mention?
No,
we also have Elisa Kramer here and this Colleen from there.
Yes, so they'll be able to fill in any of the gaps.
Yeah.
So what you have in front of you is the draft scope outline. So this is an expanded version of what you actually do have much more of the scope, still work in progress, but we didn't want to overwhelm you with all of the pages, but we're hoping by next week we can get you the full draft. The scope, the outline is taken straight from the scope where it stands right now. And just a couple things I want to mention, we just found out, they released the information for the grant, we just found out it's due 3 weeks earlier than we expected, which is not good news, but we'll make it work. So it's due April 4th. I guess the good news is we'll be done by April 4th. And another piece of information that came out of, there was a webinar and Liz attended and the slides are posted online. No match is required for for rural communities, which includes West Newbury. So we're trying to understand if we should have a match or not, so that's something, you know, to be discussed. So in this outline here, just kind of high level overview, just also want to note that to have a competitive grant application, you have to meet certain criteria. And they have a whole scoring card for the criteria. So you'll see a lot of information on community engagement and you know, public education for vulnerable groups, that sort of thing. So the reason those are both in there so detailed is because it is required and that's something they're gonna be looking for. And then one other thing to note with these subtasks, a consultant wouldn't necessarily be involved in every one of these subtasks. So when we do reach out to someone to get some prices, we'll make sure that we let them know exactly which tasks we're looking for costs or additional ideas. So you can kind of get a sense from the lead here, you know, who would be involved, and you'll notice that tasks 1, 2, and 3, which are heavy on the public engagement and project management, tends to be staff, volunteers, maybe some additional groups. The consultant doesn't really get too involved until you start getting into some of the design and alternatives. So really, the goal of this project is really threefold. And you can kind of break it down by task here. So one is the public engagement and the vulnerable populations effort. So that's tasks 1 through 3. I'm not gonna walk through every task, that would take too long. Another goal, which I think is of extreme value to the town, is getting existing condition information, base plan, a design-ready base plan. So that would be doing your wetland delineations, which was strongly recommended by the MVP coordinator. Survey, anything that can get the town closer to any sort of design, not necessarily a giant design, but it could also be useful in the short term. If you've got your survey, all your data in-house, and say there's an emergency out there, you can come up with a temporary solution fairly quickly. So I think this is very valuable if you have that in-house, ready to go. And the survey would also have it would be a boundary survey. So you would get the right of way, the exact right of way, and the property lines, which is also very important. So that's a good amount of time just to collect a lot of that information, but it's what's needed to one, move forward, but also kind of look at some of these alternatives. Like, we need to take it a little step farther than planning, because the alternatives might really come down to like a foot or two difference of impact. So some of the survey information is going to be really important, but again, it's useful to have anyway. And then the third goal is the alternatives analysis and some concept plans for some focus areas. So that is in tasks, 6, 7, and 8. So that's where, you might come across a universe of alternatives, like from all walks of life. Anybody can, the public, any of the boards, commissions can throw out some ideas. And then we'll do an early analysis of that and see what makes sense. And then you might pare it down to another kind of set of alternatives that may be more feasible, and you look at costs and whatnot. So, and then with the goal of having some concept plans for the determined focus areas so that we could go forward, whether it's a shorter term project or a longer term project. And that's something we'll decide over a couple of years if that's the direction that the town wants to go on. So the next step is, we're actually meeting with MVPC in Wilkinson on the environmental planners there, because we were asking them to help with task 3 and some of task 2 for some of the regional collaboration and bringing in kind of the component of vulnerable populations, which West Newbury has vulnerable populations, if that's the correct census term, but West Newbury does not have environmental justice populations. But it's all inclusive, and it's a matter of just sharing information between all the different towns. And then we will be reaching out to some consultants, engineering firms, and get some prices, get some ideas from them, and we'll submit by April 4th. But the goal will be, hopefully we can get a draft for you guys for next week.
Okay.
So, I don't know if Liz had anything else to fill in, or.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but there's a acronym in there, Living Shoreline.
I was just gonna ask.
The Living Shoreline Technical Committee, that's another aspect of potential regionalization of solutions. And the idea there is that some experts would act as consultants, particularly on the nature-based solutions kind of thing that the MVP program is emphasizing. So they really want the town to prioritize those as alternatives and look at those first before they go to other alternatives. So that group would be part of supporting the efforts of looking at those solutions. And they would come up with things that would hopefully be transferable to other Merrimack River communities in terms of what might work.
And those experts will largely be comprised of people who are already identified locally or relatively locally, and most of whom are retired and have worked with somebody on the committee previously, so she believes that their interest, she's spoken with, I think, most of them, and I mean, correct me if I'm saying it, but you know, they've demonstrated interest in what's being worked on.
So these are volunteers, not.
Yeah.
Yes, volunteers.
Yeah, volunteer.
And there would be some tie-in, we're thinking, with NDPC in
Right.
terms of kind of the transferability of.
Right,
Right, sounds good.
yeah, the connection with MVPC is hopefully gonna help us considerably with, and, you know, the likelihood that whatever is done here can be applied elsewhere should help this make this look more attractive to the state.
And we're looking to tie into a lot of the pre-existing collaboration that goes on among the regular meetings that MVPC hosts, so the DPW stormwater, the planning group, there's a mayor's managers group. And I've talked to Gerard a couple of times that, you know, those existing meetings, they're always looking for content. They can bring in speakers and presentations. It's a pre-existing forum for sharing. We think there's gonna be a lot of enthusiasm among some of the other communities to really, you know, learn from what we're doing and share information on what they're doing. And I think there's gonna be some nice synergies there.
So how challenging is it gonna be to meet this advanced deadline?
It will be more challenging than it was
Already.
a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it just kicks you into gear that much faster. And I've been working with Liz and with Elisa. You know, we've been meeting regularly, and we met with Angus, so we're all on the same page. You know, I think the on the staff end, it should be fine. It's just engaging the consultants, and consultants are busy, but I think this would be something they would be interested in.
What's the time frame associated with this work plan? I mean, there's a lot.
It's 2 years, it's 2 years.
Seems like a lot to get done.
I know,
Are we
well,
sure it's 2 years?
Yeah.
I mean.
yes, if we don't get it for 2 years, I don't think that we would.
Yeah, we couldn't take it on.
Yeah, and during we had a remote meeting with Michelle Rowden earlier this year, and that was explicit. And she said it wasn't just West Newbury, it was a number of communities. I think the last round who had applied for 2-year grants, got 1-year grants. And I think we heard some maybe contrition there that they realized, or maybe it wasn't her, maybe it was her supervisors, but someone in her office, I think, realized that that was not really the way to handle it. And they were explicit or she was explicit in our meeting, you know, a month or 2 months ago that they're gonna have a lot more 2-year grants this time.
And we are going to be putting it into a schedule, which will help inform the scope, and hopefully I could probably get the schedule for you next week as well. And then you're gonna see like where it's just too much, and we may need to cut things back or consolidate, something like that. So we're very aware of not overdoing it. We know what it was before, and yeah. There should be a little more time between events, for example, that kind of thing.
Okay. Anything else?
I know Elise is on, I don't
Yeah.
know if there's.
Got one. Elisa, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it was covered well. I think we have a lot before us, but we'll get the application together and we'll make the due date.
Great. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, our next item is Board of Health, proposed tobacco MOU between Mass Health Officers Association and the town of West Newbury. So, yeah, so I can take the lead. I talked to Paul about this. So we're pretty sure the select board needs to sign off on it, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So this, I mean, this only applies to the food mart.
That's all I could figure out.
Yeah.
Right,
And
Do a sting operation.
right.
that's what bothers me.
Right, I think it's absurd, quite honestly. I mean, there's one operation in town, the flea market, that sells tobacco. And as much as any of us might not be, proponents for tobacco, at the same time, yeah.
Well, is there or has it been a problem? Is it even necessary?
There, according to Paul, there's not been an issue. There was, a while ago.
Yeah.
But currently, like, they have signage. I would rather,
When did he qualify with a while?
under previous ownership,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
so, and not to say it was a problem, but it's markedly, they're aware of the requirements. I've been in there where the people in front of me have purchased cigarettes and they've asked them, even though they were clearly.
And, if sales of alcohol are at all indicative,
Yeah.
I'm pretty well past 21 and I get carded every time.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's what's going on.
yeah. So it's, I don't think it's necessary, and I kind of just want to discourage the general trend of all these MOUs with other groups, unless it's a need we identify and we
Yeah.
seek it out. And I don't like groups that stand to gain something from it, coming in and telling us what we need.
So do we need to, I'm guessing that none of us are in support of it. Do we need that would be a negative motion, I guess, how do we need to?
Well, it's only on under updates, it wasn't, specifically wasn't put on
Wasn't
under
put-
action.
No,
And the reason
Okay.
being, we knew it was the first time we were seeing
Yeah,
it.
okay,
I did note that, it was received, on January 21st, but not sent to my office till February 10th, so I think communication needs to be improved there. If this board's gonna be asked to, participate in something, I mean, it's kind of.
So we don't need any additional, I mean, I thought this should be a discussion, and then if we want to vote, it could be next meeting, but it sounds like we don't need any additional information, or do we need to table it till next time?
I didn't see the need for it at all.
Okay. All right, so I mean, given that it's not an action item, is it appropriate to vote on it now, or?
I would say not, I can communicate it to Paul tomorrow, I know, Rebecca had spoken with him today, just to see if someone would be there, because we knew we'd have a crowded agenda, and we wanted to manage the timing. And he said just to let them know tomorrow, what came out of the discussion.
Okay. All right, good. All right, item C, an update on the Mass Housing Partnership. This is the technical assistance application that the Affordable Housing Trust put in. So they've changed the format of the program a little bit. It's no longer an outright grant. What they're doing now is a forgivable loan. As long as, you go through the project and put the project out to bid, the developer ideally would cover the cost of it, as part of their process. She said the only time that the town would be asked to pay the money back is if they went through the process and the parcel was developable and the town for some reason didn't move forward. In which case, I mean, the trust is happy to pay that money.
so what kind of things does the trust, or I'm sorry, does the Mass Housing Partnership look at when they evaluate the site?
Everything. I mean, they'll look at the street issue off Main
Yeah,
Street.
that's my biggest
Yeah,
concern.
yeah, I went through that in detail with her, and it's also called out in the 2009 feasibility study. I've supplied all that material to them, but they'll look at that, everything, septic, water. I think it's laid out in here, all the things they look at. Let's see. Yeah, so it's a full feasibility study, and then they help with the RFP as well, and they help manage that, so. I feel like it's ideal, even if we had to pay the money, I think it would be a good program if somebody else managed this for us.
Yeah.
So I tentatively have a site walk scheduled for March 28th, I think, with them and some of the engineers that they typically use. I'm not sure which one they would assign to this project.
Is that something that could be posted? I might be interested in.
Yeah, I'll keep you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Any questions on that, Chris?
No, I saw, was curious if the developer would then own the cost if it not, but. We talked about the Affordable Housing Trust potentially doing it anyways if you didn't get the grants.
Right.
Worst case scenario is you apply, you get it, if it didn't comply, you could still fund it.
Right.
You might save some money otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still worth pursuing.
Mhm. Okay. All right, on to action items. Which one of these is,
So the first three, the UCAN sports have been tabled,
okay,
so those aren't before you tonight. The tri-state track, the proponent was not available to attend. If you are comfortable with the information in the packet, you could act on it, or they could come back at a future meeting if you'd like them
and
to.
what's the, that's not until June,
June 21st, yeah.
so Chris, did you have any questions on it?
Yeah, they always do. First one, he talks about signing, it says none, and this, the previous lady was here, and my question is, pre-race notification signage. I think we have to make that a requirement for these in the future, and should be one week, people promise that, but they don't follow through.
Yeah, we asked, but I think it needs to be on the.
I think it's gotta be a requirement, if you can't do it, don't apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Chris, it might be that we're gonna need to have someone on staff who's responsible for confirming that, because,
Yeah.
you know, we don't wanna hear after the fact that it wasn't done.
Well, as I found last fall with the two issues, the two races had issues, and there's gotta be like a wrap up at the end to make sure that things were done, because the one race left a ton of trash and the other race shut down one lane of the roads, which they weren't supposed to, so we have to have some kind of follow-up assessment on these afterwards to make sure, because we just found out tonight that the lady was in it, you know, there were issues with traffic and they weren't supposed to be blocking roads and stuff. Other question, his response was very strange about his police detail. I said, we previously have been required to have police detail and be happy to connect with the police department. Well, that's
That's
part of the
a requirement,
application,
yeah.
so why?
Yeah, all right, so we should continue this till then.
Can I ask a quick question? Can I just make a comment or a question?
About this item?
Yes. Should I walk up here? Or wait,
I can hear you.
thank you. I noticed that when we have public events in town, be it road races, bike races, whatever, they put signs up and many times they leave signs up. So can we ask them to make sure that they remove their signs?
Yeah, so that would be part of the post-race
Thank you.
evaluation, good comment, yeah. Good thing.
My opinion, I've generally seen the signs get taken down the same day. I'll watch the sweep truck go and pick up the sign.
So there's a sign right now, if you come around the Rocks Village Bridge, kind of where you can't reach it, because I was gonna take it down, it says wrong way. And I don't wanna look at that. I
I've
think-
seen that sign. I wonder what that was all about.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a road race, so
Yeah, that's
maybe we
interesting.
can have it taken down.
I've wondered what that
Been
was.
there for a long
It's
time.
been there since last year, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe we can have their stuff down.
Yeah.
So can you add
See,
that?
most of the sign is just the fairly large stuff. that
Yeah,
they
it's
pin in the
small
ground
stuff
and
that they kind
announce
of
the
forget,
dates of
and
it,
we're
so-
all faced with looking at, so,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so we'll, and will they be here for our next meeting, Jim? Do you know next
We can
week?
make sure.
They'll be back?
Yeah.
Was he out of the country or? Is that the one that was out of the country?
No, I
No.
think that was.
Okay, item E, a review of Coffin Street culvert hydrologic and hydraulic evaluation. So looking for board direction regarding the culvert sizing and design. And now we do have Butch here. Yes, Christine.
Okay, all right, that's the one we want. All right, so in your packet, I included the latest drawings for both culverts that were submitted for the notice of intent, and there was a conservation commission meeting on Monday night. What we're here for tonight is for this particular culvert, the one at or near 37 Coffin. So when we got the plans, we did another kind of internal review with staff. And talking through it, the water superintendent had some additional comments about the water line. And he wanted to add a couple things. He had some concerns about potential flow issues, and I'll let Butch kind of get into that later. So the cost started to go up and up. So right now, the original cost with the contingency was 280,000. And also important that this was designed to meet the stream crossing standards to the maximum extent practicable. So it's a very large structure, 5 by 8 box culvert. that would basically, you know, expands the stream, so the stream is basically in free flow. And I do believe this had more ecological value than the other one that we had talked about last time. But the more we looked at it, so Mark, the water superintendent, saw that's the water line, so slightly above is where it is now, because they did the test pit, they knew the elevation. So then the engineer, Williams and Spragus, proposed to lower it a certain amount, and then you put insulation over it because of the frost line being exposed, but Mark thought perhaps it should be slightly lower, but then the discussion turned into that there were some other things that we needed to do. So then it was like we had the same discussion all over again of, you know, what value is it for the stream crossing standards if we're looking at over $300,000 now? We asked Butch, if you did it in-house, like we're gonna do with the other one, what do you think it would be? And he came up with a preliminary estimate of about 50,000. So that's pretty significant. And we talked to Clay and so we discussed it with the Conservation Commission as well. And there wasn't any pushback. I mean, I think maximum extent practicable, according to Clay, cost is a very real concern. So we're looking at, rather than the 5x8 to kind of span the stream, right now there's a 36-inch or it's a 36 inch. So we're looking to do 2 36 inches. So it doesn't go any deeper than what it is now. But you get that additional flow so you can pass the larger storms, and there's no downstream, you know, culverts or anything that may be affected like there was in the other one. But I think it's also worth listening to some of the concerns. Butch can go over that.
My understanding, just on the water main issue, is that there's a hydrant down at the end of Colon, and it's supposedly there's a fire rating flow. And the more bends that you put in the water main, that flow will go down. And they're talking, the 2 22s coming in, then going down to another couple of 22-degree fittings going across to each other. All those fittings, and then he's talking possibly the double hydrants and valves, so that way there, if there's anything happens underneath the box culvert, that they can shut everything down and run water through from hydrant to hydrant, because the only feed into Cortland Lane and that into Coffin Street is from Main Street.
Okay.
So there was that, and then with the amount of weight that the box culvert would put on the, it's called asbestos concrete pipe, and it's a fragile pipe. So to avoid all that, we kind of discussed maybe going to a twin 36, which is at the current grade. We get the current grade at the one there is now, and it wouldn't affect anything. And the water main, you know, issue, water line issue, and it's something that we can take care of in house.
And didn't you say that there'd be a difference in how long the road was closed between the two approaches?
Oh, yeah, because initially they, or with the large box culvert, he said, Rich Williams told us 2 to 3 weeks closed, and how long?
We can do it in a day. A few years ago, we did the same thing out on Georgetown Road. We took out the culvert that was there, and we put in double 36, and the road was passable that afternoon.
So how did we even get to looking at something like
The
that?
road, the stream crossing act.
Crossing standards.
We wanted to see what we needed to do to meet the stream crossing act, and that,
The state is really.
So you have to prove it and then back out of the equation.
exactly.
Yeah, you
Now
have
we know.
Should have been it Butch.
Yeah,
it's not that simple.
yeah,
We had to look at it.
yeah.
That's the.
No, it's a wetland.
So from where we are now logically, this is the clear choice and.
Right, and this due diligence allows not just Concom, but DEP
Yeah.
to approve this, or to approve an alternate approach that doesn't meet the stream crossing standards, because the town's gonna be able to document its due diligence to show that, you know, despite engineering it, it didn't end up being practicable, and that allows them to approve something which they could otherwise deny if you weren't able to show that you went through this process.
You have to document, you can't make the standard.
Correct.
Okay.
So, which,
So, and one thing to tie back to, earlier in the meeting, this opportunity with the Ipswich River Watershed Association and the DER grant, and the opportunity to get more culvert mapping townwide. Butch has, said that, you know, between he and Paul, you said there's maybe 5 or 6
There's probably about
culverts
a half a dozen more that need some attention.
townwide that, but that would justify based on ecological considerations, you know, the stream crossing standards and are things that we should get built into the capital program as big ticket items.
Mhm.
So I think this, mapping opportunity with the DER grant, and this is something brand new, which we haven't, I just learned about it yesterday. So it's brand new, but Ipswich River Watershed Association got a grant from DER to map culverts in 5 communities, and West Newbury is one of the 5. So that's gonna be an opportunity for us to get,
Excellent.
you know, grant funded, to really, so we can have a clear plan for townwide, which are the half dozen culverts that we should anticipate going ahead are gonna be, you know, bigger cost items.
So these 2 culverts, we have the warrant article, I believe.
Yep.
Wasn't it a little over 400,000 we were looking at, now it's gonna reduce to under 100, it seems.
Just
Probably right around
right
100,
around 100, a little over.
yeah,
Okay, so that will get modified.
correct, yeah,
which,
with your direction tonight, yeah.
the culvert that's currently there, the single 36-inch culvert that's currently there, is that perched on both ends? One end, both
All
ends?
one of the inlet is, right now, it's crushed down to a 30 because the bottom's rotted out of it.
Yeah,
And from what I gather, the outlet is still at 36.
yeah. Is there any way to install, if you replace it with 2 36-inch, culverts, is there any way to install them so that they are not perched or less perched? Is that, I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I mean, you know, the reason for doing the box culvert to begin with was for ecological value. And, you know, it is a perennial stream. So there would, if it were passable, there most likely would be critters that pass.
We could,
And
I think we could put some, you know, some 6- stone in, 4- stone. We could do something like that.
Well, we're gonna be talking it over with the engineer and.
Yeah.
And the Conservation Commission did mention that, you know, even though it's not the box culvert, that, you know, it'd be nice to keep the pipes big enough so they can pass. So we'll look at some of the elevations on either side.
One of the benefits if the board supports going in this alternate approach is, because the scale of the project would be much, smaller and most of the work would be done in-house with limited, you know, sub-consultants. It wouldn't require procurement. So part of why we've been pressing the timeline is anticipating putting it out for public bid in the months that takes, and the interest in getting it rebuilt this summer. If we go with the alternate approach, it substantially reduces the pressure to get through Concom kind of ASAP, because it could be permitted as late as April, May, even later, and it wouldn't affect the ability to get it built this summer.
The big goal was to do it in the dry season, so we don't have to mess with the dewatering or anything like that.
Okay,
It seems like the easiest decision we've had in a long time.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Concom seemed favorable, so,
Yeah, that's right, you were sitting
Yeah.
next to me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you wanna do the right thing, and we tried it, but it's a very different. Cost between the two, it's not even close.
And I think also the ecological value of the stream habitat and everything is not super high. I mean, it dries out part of the time, and so I think that's part of why they're amenable to it.
Yeah, I think it would be good, and maybe through this grant, to really understand like. Where it is like a very applicable area to do this, because. If you're not a wetlands person, it's not, I don't fully understand that myself, and I think,
Yeah,
if we can understand that as a town and just know that going into. The design ahead of time would be very helpful.
okay, so are you looking for a vote?
Yeah, I think it would, since, you know, I filed the NOI on the board's behalf, so if the board would, authorize a revision to the, plan and resubmittal with the NOI with a 2 36-inch, that's what we will do.
We'll make a motion to revise the notice of intent to go with the 2 36-inch culverts and move the box culvert.
I I'll second, but I'd like to make a friendly amendment. And that, as Butch indicated, he could or would try to look at.
We'll
what could be done
definitely look into
To
that.
try to ensure that, the culverts were as passable as practicable. Second,
You know, second, your friendly amendment.
right, somebody need to approve my, I seconded it, just somebody need to second my amendment.
All right, Chris, formally for the record, Chris has seconded the friendly amendment.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you both.
Yeah,
You
thanks.
take over.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Butch.
Which is. All right, the next item on the agenda is review of comments received on the animal control bylaw. So this version was sent out to all the relevant boards, committees, department heads, also made available to the public. And I received comments from the chief of police and animal control officer, and they were really in favor of it. They didn't offer any changes. Planning board and Concom didn't have any issues with the control part of it, but they are still very concerned about the dog waste part of it. I don't see that there's anything in the section 7 that can be amended to address that. I mean, it's pretty complete. So do either of you have any further thoughts on this?
I saw the previous one, I know there was one sent out today, yesterday, something like that, so I haven't read this one, the previous one, I don't think there's much different.
Oh, that's the one you sent this morning, Angus.
This allows only 2
Yeah.
dogs off leash.
So there's no changes in between this and what was in our last package.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't change anything. Nobody really had any substantive changes.
right, I didn't at the time, so I'm good.
Yeah. Any comments or questions, Rick?
I'm trying to find it right now,
Page 154.
yeah. Farm.
No, this.
This was supposed to get inserted.
Oh,
It's
because
just a separate email.
Yeah, I'm looking at what was posted on the web, I think it's this one out, yeah.
Okay, actually, no, I
You guys have
do
access
have
to
it
the
open,
number,
so I do have it open.
Exactly.
I forgot, I read it today, but I forgot where it was.
Yeah, so the major changes is limiting off-leash dogs to 2. The changing to immediate voice recall to try to have, you know, some tangible way for the ACO to enforce that. And then there's a provision that the ACO can petition the select board to not allow somebody to continue to use the property if they repeatedly violate. I think that's 3.10, yeah. Yeah, so we have to get legal counsel's opinion about how to word that, but I think the intent is clear.
And I assume it's looking to address the problem that we've been hearing about.
Yeah,
We
so-
don't have a provision.
Right. So I'll open it up to public comment if you guys are all set. Anybody online wish to comment on the animal control bylaw? Anybody here want to comment on that? All right. So let's move ahead with this version.
Sure. We can refer this to legal and
Okay.
we'll send this out tomorrow.
All right, so the next item is the right to farm bylaw. So I'm assuming most people know that. So before we have, the select board has a discussion about these 2 versions, I just want to kind of talk about where we are with this. I think it's fine for people to have a different opinion, but I want to make sure we all understand, you know, what we're disagreeing on. So the right to farm laws are a state set of laws, all states have them. And they are designed to protect commercial farmers from nuisance lawsuits. And the reason for that is because that's their livelihood. And, you know, especially up in this area, a lot of large farms were operating for hundreds of years. And then people started moving from the urban areas and they don't like the smell, they don't like the dust. So these laws are meant to protect them. Obviously, you know, I think in the last 25 years, what farming means has changed. It's no longer these big family farms. You know, there's lots of smaller farms, there's subsistence farming. And, you know, right now, the state laws still only protect commercial farming. I guess,
Wendy, can I ask a
could you,
question?
could I finish first and then
Of
we'll
course
take
you
public comment? So, MDR has indicated that they are aware of the changing in farming and they are thinking about how to make these right to farm laws more, inclusive. But as it stands right now, that's all that's protected by the state. So the way that municipalities can try to put their own spin on it is through a bylaw, which is what we're talking about. And, even given that the state has put out a template bylaw for municipalities to use for right to farm, and they say specifically commercial farms. So, some towns, I think there are 4 towns right now out of 170 towns that have right to farm bylaws. Only 4 of them acknowledge anything other than commercial farms. And it's kind of a range from explicitly saying this bylaw also covers non-commercial farms to just removing the word commercial and not really calling it out. But the fact that the majority, the vast majority still are under the commercial, is the kind of the pinch point here of what we're trying to grapple with. So the components of a bylaw is, first of all, that protections from nuisance lawsuits. There are some other components, though, that I think benefit all farming types, commercial, non-commercial, and those are the disclosure notification. So if somebody new moves to town, they get a form that says, this is a right to farm community. There will be farming activities, there may be noises, smells, dust. And so that way that they're informed before they even move here. So that's one way. And I think that benefits everybody, whether you're a commercial farmer or not. The other thing is establishing an agricultural commission. I mean, that is meant to kind of focus on the positive parts of farming. It's meant to educate people about what farming means, to promote young people getting into the farming, as a way of life. And so I see that as a really positive thing in a bylaw and which benefits non-commercial and commercial farmers. And I guess the last piece of the bylaw is it sets out a process if there's a dispute about farming or a grievance about farming. Typically, the bylaws lay out how that will be resolved. And not all communities that have a right to farm bylaw have an ag commission. Those that do typically have the ag commission involved in that dispute process, but many don't, and they just have, there's already programs set up or state law that has the Board of Health play a primary role in resolving disputes. And so even though we don't have a right to farm bylaw right now, all of you, and I know Amy, you expressed some concerns about who's going to protect us. The Board of Health is set out as your person to go to if you have issues. So that's kind of the final piece. So in terms of where we are right now, you all know the right to farm. We're calling it the ad hoc committee, has been working on a right to farm bylaw for almost 1.5 years. And they brought forward a proposed bylaw in the fall, which went through the normal article review process, which it goes out to boards and committees. We get comments, we try to address people's comments, and then it goes before town meeting. So when we did that in the fall, the select board felt that not all of the comments had been adequately addressed. There was also not enough time to really have a good public participation process so people could give input. And so we did decide to take it off the warrant for the fall, not to remove it permanently, but just to give it some more time to work out these issues. And so it was our intent to have it on in the spring. But as we were getting ready to close out the warrant, the ad hoc group decided they wanted to do the citizens petition instead of going through the normal warrant process. The problem with that is the citizens petition can't be changed. Like, so from between now and town meeting, even if they have a great idea, they can't change what they put in for the bylaw. And so that's why the select board decided to just put a placeholder in of another bylaw so that if we could come to consensus or we wanted to make changes, there would at least be a mechanism to do it. So it wasn't an attempt to kind of co-opt the right to farm group's bylaw. It was honestly an intent to just keep our options open. So that's where we are right now. Tonight, the select board has 2 versions of the bylaw that we will bring forward. One is the right to farms version, the ad hoc committee's version. And what we did was incorporate all the comments received that were incorporated. And then that was circulated to boards and committees over the last 2 weeks. So that's one of the versions that's in the packet, and it has a lot of red lines. People actually gave us additional comments on that. And then the other version is what I think is a compromise, right to farm bylaw. I've been working with the ad hoc group and trying to find a way to come to consensus, and it's a shorter law, it's more streamlined. And so that's the other bylaw we're considering tonight. So what we need to do tonight is decide which one we want to bring forward. And then whatever one that is, and the citizens petition will be discussed at a joint meeting between the FinCom and the select board on March 27th. Is that right, Angus?
Yep.
And so that's the point where you all, if you're in favor of the citizens petition, would have an opportunity to speak about that. And then the FinCom and the select board would vote what our recommendations were. So tonight, we're gonna talk about these two select board bylaws. I don't know, typically we talk about it as a board and then we
I
take,
have one question.
can I just finish, please?
I'd like to ask my question, sorry.
Yeah, so typically we talk about it as a board and then we get public comment. I don't know if you wanna follow that model or you wanna take public comment first and then.
I have a comment, I have a question.
I'm talking to the board right now and, so how do you wanna approach this? Do you feel like you wanna talk about it first or get comment and then discuss how you wanna move forward?
For you and the process you choose.
Okay, all right. And,
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly willing to listen to comments beforehand, but it probably makes sense for us to talk about it.
yeah, I think maybe if we could decide, do you have any feeling on which, are you content going with the consensus version, even though not all of the ad hoc committee is in agreement with that? I'm still calling it a compromise version.
What happens if that's the one we pick, the citizens petition still goes on the warrant, you're gonna have two on the floor of the town meeting pitting one against the other.
Right, but the hope was that we would come up with one and because we can still change this, I'm hoping that, there's still a possibility we can come to that point, but we may end up with two.
The other problem we've had since the fall town meeting, I guess, is there's been no public forum. I know they had a meeting at the Grange, that doesn't fulfill that obligation of public feedback response to it, nor does tonight's meeting either,
Yeah,
so.
so I know that they are planning to have a public information session before town meeting, correct?
Absolutely.
In March,
Yes.
yeah.
But if there were two bylaws and the town has one and they have one, the town still has to have a public forum or input on ours.
We intend to present both of them so that they have the option to pick whichever one they want, if it comes to that.
Yeah. So, is there anything in the compromise version that you're concerned about?
Well, I looked at the one previously and then we got this one tonight, so I think, a couple.
Well, there's a version of that one in the packet. I received some additional comments from Catherine yesterday that I added to that one,
And you added into which one?
the compromise version. What you have in hard copy just has some additional red lines, mostly wording changes, not really substantive changes.
Well, the one thing that I did have a comment, it talks about the disclosure be signed by the landowner, and I changed it to or the legal representative, that's been cleaned up.
Yeah.
In some fashion, and the other changes I haven't evaluated, I'm very much in favor, and I think the clear distinction between this and the one they're presenting is, and it's gonna come down to the heart of the issue is this for all properties in town, or is it just for commercial?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, so the way this compromise version is laid out is it just follows state law. So the advantage to that is that if state law changes, then we don't have to modify the bylaw. Whereas if we list all the definition out based on current, which is actually 1990 state law, we would have to change it. So this was actually a suggestion by Chris Grant as a way to try to get around this issue.
well, yeah, we don't have to revisit this every year or two.
Right. If you want, I can go through the original version that we circulated. I did receive quite a few comments on that, but if we're not gonna go with that version, I don't wanna spend a lot of time going through the comments and unless you think that's
I'm fine with it, I'm fine with the comments.
Yeah,
I mean, you could-
Rick, did you wanna add anything or do you wanna open it up to comment?
No, I don't have anything to add at this point. Well, I do have one, but it's not something anybody else has. I know I mentioned it originally last year, and
About the pesticides.
yeah, about pesticides.
Yeah.
There's no reference to herbicides either. I don't know, people, for all I know, somebody might be trying to grow, Roundup ready soybeans or something. I don't expect that, but if we're gonna address stuff, we gotta address stuff.
So,
But pesticides are also, and do we know that nobody's going to use neonics? If the beekeepers, they should really care about it.
yeah,
I mean, if anybody should care about that, but particularly if they're beekeepers. Who are vendors.
yeah, so as that stands, it's deferring to state law regarding commercial farmers.
Yeah.
And the requirements about, best, normally accepted agricultural practices.
Right, so, you
Which-
make an assumption that if somebody's doing it for a living, it's a commercial farm, and they are a professional.
Mhm.
One way or another, they're a professional, what they're doing, that they follow best practices, and if somebody's, doing, backyard farming, you don't know what the background is.
Yeah,
You made a comment about the number of towns that have adopted it and the number of towns that have commercials, the number on that,
four
Yeah.
don't say commercial,
and how many towns have adopted it,
around 170.
any local towns?
Ipswich Ipswich took the commercial out, but they don't explicitly say acknowledge non-commercial. So I haven't been able, I don't know, have you talked to anybody in Ipswich? Kathy?
Yeah, their bylaw, similar to what the ad hoc committee put forward, refers to simply keeping of horses or keeping of livestock. So they are all encompassing is the way that's written.
Mhm.
And
It doesn't exist.
sustenance
And
farms.
sustenance farming.
Yeah, I don't see that in their bylaw. I mean, I did a word search for non-commercial and that's,
If you look under how they define a farm, it's in that section. I think it's their, bottom of their first page.
okay, I didn't see that.
And can I make a comment about pesticides, which may be helpful to Rich? We discussed at length with Chris Grant and Long Hill Farm, because of course, they're the experts on pesticide and usage. And they fall under federal and state regulation. They actually have to be licensed and trained on pesticide usage. So Wendy is right, this falls under state and federal law. Relative to small farm holders here in town, there is no regulation for them, but there isn't currently anyways. So it's, I don't know where you can fall in unless you make it a town bylaw that's outside of the scope of a right to farm bylaw. That all farms in town have to use whatever it is you want them to use. Right?
It's not regulated on lawns either.
Right.
In town,
Yeah.
so you could put
But,
all the
yeah,
chemicals you wanted on your lawn, nematode, whatever you wanted. I mean, it is regulated in this town, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
what we were informed was that agriculturally based properties use less pesticides than the average homeowner puts on their lawn. So I think we all understand the concern, but I'm not sure that there's a basis for it.
Yeah.
And the home farm doesn't have access to agricultural pesticides, they have the Home Depot version.
I'm so sorry for talking over you. I have one question.
Sure.
You made a comment that commercial farms enjoy protections under nuisance lawsuits. Do you mind elaborating on those protections?
Yeah, so the whole point of the right to farm laws is to provide protections, and that's all laid out. If you look in the proposed bylaw, all the state statutes that are listed out. So that lays out a process. It says they can't be, there's no lawsuits for nuisances, related to odors and farming activities.
Is that your concern as our select board for not allowing the same privilege to small stakeholders? I'm genuinely trying to understand why you're opposed to this. Because it seems so common sense to me to allow small stakeholders like myself, like literally everybody in this room for the most, well, many of you have larger farm. I got a couple acres. I got a couple of animals in my backyard. I got a little vegetable patch. I'm not looking for special privileges, but it would also be nice to be part of and accessing the agricultural commission. To be able to get, I was 4-H member 12 years of my life. I would love to be able to get all the information I possibly can on best practices.
You would be.
I would also like to be able to have an arbitration process in the event that I had no butter.
You have one right now. Board of Health is your.
I'm gonna just come up and stand up. Wendy Willis, 2 Georgetown Road. I'm a local realtor. There are 2 other excellent realtors in this community. For us to be backward looking, which is just, we have this right to farm and this is fine and this should just be our model moving forward, I think is backward thinking. I sell so many properties now to people coming in from Boston and other places because it's a more virtual world. And when they come in, they're like, great, it's the country. I literally moved somebody in and I moved them out because they're like, we moved next to a farm. We don't want to smell that.
Yeah.
It is something to be concerned about and think about. I think about my little tiny farm. It's minuscule, but I've lived here 30 years. I would be mortified if somebody could move into my next door and be like, bye-bye, or I'm gonna complain. And you're the only people in charge of that, Board of Health and the Select Board. An agricultural commission, by definition, are people of peers that I believe will give me a better opportunity to express my concerns or fears or worries. Thank you.
Yeah, so Wendy, I would just say to that, the agricultural commission, it's a purely an advisory board. They don't have, they would not, under this bylaw, have any standing to enforce anything.
But I thought a select board member was gonna be a part of it.
That's possible,
Okay.
but they would send a report and to the Board of Health and the Select Board. They wouldn't be able to make any decisions on their own.
Okay,
So they're
standalone, thank you.
Yes, they're mediating.
Question, how many other committees are the select board permanent members on board? Okay, which ones are those?
Affordable Housing Trust, Capital Improvement Committee, Community Preservation Committee, and Investment Policy Committee.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Barry, did you have a comment? You're still on mute, Barry.
There we go. Barry Fogel, 4 Upland Lane. To address actually Wendy's comment there, our local zoning bylaw permits, I'll call them residential agricultural activities anywhere in town. So it's permitted by zoning. And so the fact that someone might move in next to a property where someone has a chicken coop or some horses, they could not challenge that on the basis of zoning. And the only mechanism that's in place right now, if for neighbors to raise questions about the operation of either a commercial farm or even I'll call it a family operation on a residential property, there's a well-established, long-standing set of statutes in Chapter 111 of the general laws that gives the Board of Health authority to investigate, inspect, take action to evaluate, and even to abate through an order anything that they might deem to be a nuisance: odor, vermin, flies, dust, noise. And there's case law and there's lots of statutory background for the boards of health doing that. So right now, the exception that exists that protects commercial farms is listed in the model bylaw. That's Chapter 111, Section 125A. It says that boards of health have that authority with respect to commercial farms, but commercial farming done in accordance with established best practices is by definition not a nuisance. So there's a statutory state protection for commercial farms run properly. Now, if it's not run properly, the Board of Health can take action. The same way they could on a property that has a chicken coop or a horse run or whatever. And so that was the first point. And Chapter 40A, Section 3, which is mentioned in the bylaw, is called the Dover Amendment, and it has an express provision that says that a municipality cannot unreasonably restrict or prohibit commercial agricultural activities. So our zoning permits that obviously within the town as well. I've spoken with the folks just recently who are advocating the bylaw that's on the town warrant now. One of the things that I heard from them was they think that the advisory commission is an important thing to have in town to educate people, to advocate for farming, both commercial and residential. And I think that's a great function. And I think that would be a great idea in the bylaw. My concern is giving that commission the primary role in trying to resolve disputes between a property owner who has some kind of agricultural activity, not a commercial farm, and a neighbor. I've heard a lot of anecdotes about disputes that have arisen between neighbors where chicken coops are very close to the property line. They might create flies. I've heard stories about dust from horses on people's property. And obviously, most neighbors probably can work that stuff out. But if two neighbors are going at it over something that somebody who's farming on residential property, if they can't resolve it between them, they don't have to go to court, although people do that, but they can go to the local board of health. And the local board of health has the authority and the responsibility, frankly, to investigate and evaluate it and try to work it out. If we have a bylaw in West Newbury that declares the benefits of farming, both commercial and residential, that creates an AC to educate and inform and advocate, but does not give that advisory commission the primary role, I would be supportive of it. And I also believe the disclosure notification is a great element of this bylaw because it gives people moving into town notice that they're in a community where people do farm, both commercially and on their residential property. So right now, my only recommendation to the select board would be to try to find some kind of common ground. Is almost everything in there, and I've offered some edits to Wendy to take consideration of, and the committee, is to just change that one aspect, which is to not make the AC the forum for dispute resolution. I'm fearful that the makeup of the commission can change over time depending on the makeup of the select board that appoints them, and that you could end up with people at loggerheads just in the process of building up that commission if they have that kind of authority. If they don't, you're going to end up with advocates on there, and that's a special role, and it would be good for the community. So I think there are protections for both types of farming. I don't think the bylaw necessarily needs to call that out other than acknowledge that it happens. And again, I would be supportive without the AC being the mediator or the party to where disputes must go.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Right. First of all, I want to thank everybody who have participated in both sides. I like what was the gentleman's name, Barry?
Barry.
One of the things that I appreciated is trying to find a common ground. So I went through both, both draft versions. And one of the things that, in the spirit of information and informing people about, we live in an agricultural town. I know that, I understand that this is a draft, but the Board of Selectmen, you left out some stuff that I think that will be very helpful, and that is the definition of what is farming. And it was beautiful. I laid it all out, and it's like, this is, and it's defined it because people sometimes, one of my pet peeves about bylaws is that, it doesn't always put a lot of information, and I feel that this particular situation would be very helpful to educate people, because after all, that is one of our goals, is to educate people. So I'm highly recommending that you insert the definition of farming, and that whole section from the ad hoc committee. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it correctly. And I think that was very helpful. And I appreciate what Barry said about if we have any issues, we can go to the Board of Health. I mean, or the neighbor can go to the Board of Health, but I really do hope that we can find a common ground. That really is my hope. That's it. Thank
Me
you.
too, thank you. Yes.
Speaking to the Ag Commission, we don't have the authority written in the bylaw to mediate. We make recommendations. I just want to clear that up. The other piece is, if I have a complaint against my farm, I would much prefer to go to an Ag Commission that is familiar with agricultural practices than the Board of Health. That gives, if it's a nice mix of ag, or even, you know, not necessarily having a farm, but having knowledge around farming, I would feel more comfortable getting recommendations from a group of people that speak my language, rather than the Board of Health, who I'm not sure where they stand in the Ag Committee, or what their knowledge is. So I think it's a really nice, beautiful blending of a way for our citizens to deal with any kind of situations that arise.
Yeah, if I can just share, I did speak with the health agent about this whole thing, and he is typically the one that responds to nuisance complaints. And he said he gets maybe usually one, maybe two a year, and this is commercial and, you know, residential disputes. And he's very rarely had to take it to the Board of Health. He can usually work with the farmer and the neighbor and get it resolved. So that system has been working pretty well all along, so I just wanted to share that. I wasn't sure about the numbers, but he said it's pretty infrequent.
I just want to add that the Board of Health, our neighbor complained about our manure and 21 sheets and everything, and the Board of Health did come, and they did say we were doing a good job keeping it clean, and they said we suggest that you become friends with your neighbor. No, seriously. So I mean, that is a plug for them. I mean, it is.
Paul's great.
Does anybody have anything different to add?
Well, my name's Terry Burns. I live at 31 Ash Street. I came here 17 years ago from Newburyport. And I have horses in Newburyport. It was on my husband's family land that had been a farm for 100 years. But now it wasn't commercial anymore. I just had my own horses. You can look this up. You can look at it under Jones versus Simmons. We had families that lived next door to us. They had they owned 3 houses. And they wanted some of our land, so there wasn't anything they could do except try to extort us. They complained to everybody. They went to the town of the city of the report. The Board of Health came out unannounced several times. He went back, he said, you can eat off the floors in her barn, there's nothing dirty. They claimed that the manure was next to their house, and they made all sorts of complaints. The whole city of Newburyport was on our side. But it didn't stop these people, because everywhere we went, we won, but they just kept appealing. It went to the Massachusetts Superior Court. Yes.
What did that cost you?
$100,000.
$100,000.
For
To
my
defend your
rights.
rights in the zoning bylaw.
And this is the
absurd.
Board of Health, this was the Board of Health, the planning boards, I mean, everybody, every department had been out to my property. Like, they complained, they said my barn was too close to the property, it wasn't, to the property line, it was, you know, the Board of Health, like I said, they were on our side, they appealed the Board of Health to the state Board of Health. So I think it's really important that we have our own town bylaw that says, you can't go, if you wanna fight this, you wanna continue to fight this, our town has its bylaw, and you can go as far as you want to the state, but it's gonna be all on their cost. It cost us over $100,000. We ended up developing that property and putting in a medical building and moving here. So now instead of, you know, 4 quiet horses, these people have an access to Anna Jake's hospital. That was my driveway, and where that building is was my pasture.
Yeah,
So
I actually
miss-
read that case.
I miss that. That was the most beautiful piece of property ever, and I miss it. But I had to get out of there because these people just kept appealing.
Yeah.
And and no matter what you say, they can keep appealing, and it's still gonna cost you money.
Yeah,
So
so
we
I
don't
would
have
just
a
say,
town bylaw.
the same thing can happen with
Sure.
if we have a bylaw, the same thing
Yeah.
can happen, there's no protection.
You're repeating yourself in a bylaw to what the state law and making it stricter, so it does speak more on behalf of the farmer than it does on the person who's creating. Because you have that in writing, they've signed this document acknowledging they're aware.
as a disclosure.
Correct, and sweetens.
Yes. So this was gonna be a 15-minute discussion, so,
Well, I just wanna make a recommendation
okay,
in the essence of time,
okay.
that the Board of Selectmen work with the Right to Farm people with the goal of getting a bylaw on the fall town meeting that is agreeable to everyone.
Yeah, I.
We can sit here all night long and talk about this.
So I just wanna say, I have been doing that. I met with the committee last week. We worked together on
I saw that.
this version. It's not 100% in agreement, but I think we're getting
Well,
close.
I think that the goal would be to get everybody in
Some
agreement.
stakeholders need to be part of this conversation, and I'm just finding out about it, shame on me, I literally found out, and I posted something on Facebook, I'm sure you're all aware. We have a lot of people unhappy, like I've had 17 phone calls today with people going, this is like the tax thing. Don't they want us in town anymore? I'm just letting you know what I'm hearing, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the ad hoc committee's been working.
We can come to a compromise if we all work together.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I'm on the ad hoc committee and have been working on this for over a year, and I cannot see a reason not to include non-commercial farms on this. I have honestly looked at this. We have had, two of our large commercial farmers on this ad hoc committee, and it's been difficult because it is their livelihood, and if I don't want to get in the way of them being covered as well from this, and honestly, you know, from the beginning, this has been difficult with the select board, because I feel like you guys do not want us to have a non-commercial bylaw. And we originally came to this because we have lived in this town a long time, and we have seen the change in the town, and people keep saying, well, there's not a problem yet, you know, or we only get 2 complaints a year, but it's really a good idea to get ahead of these things.
Yes, correct.
We have a possibility, I mean, I've had houses put in next to me. Properties that are 61A have gone into development, and we're losing farms. An ad committee would not only, just one part of what they do, and probably it won't even be the biggest part, is resolving disputes or mediating disputes or making recommendations to the Board of Health for disputes. But another huge part of what they will do, not only for commercial farms, but for all of us who have smallholder farms, a couple of chickens, a goat, a couple of horses, it's not our livelihood, but it's our passion. And what it will do is it will promote that in the town, and it will make us feel like we want to continue to pay taxes on our 3 or 4 acres, even though we could build a house and make a lot of money. We want to keep it open. Any way that we can help people do that is a win for this town. And it's astounding to me that this is continuing to be an issue. I mean, if you read the Ipswich bylaw, it's beautiful. It addresses exactly what that town wanted. Right in there is the keeping of horses, you know, and smallholder farms. It's addressing what the people want to create in that town. I just don't understand why this is such an issue. And I do not want to see a bylaw go through that includes non-commercial farms in the dispute portion, in the ag committee portion, and doesn't cover them as farms. Because then if you get the wrong people on that ag commission, they are going to go after those farms. They are going to negatively affect those farms without giving them the benefit of the protection of the bylaw. You know, it's not fair. So I'm really hoping that we can make this for non-commercial farms as well, that we can encompass everybody, that we can even have definitions that include keeping of horses, what was sustenance farming, like Ipswich does. Just because a couple farms, a couple of bylaws, there's not that many that write this. A lot of them wrote their bylaws years ago, these small towns, and we've spent a lot of time calling these towns and talking to these ag commissions. And one of the things we hear again and again is they're sorry that they didn't make it non-commercial as well.
because the tenor of farms is changing, they're becoming much smaller. And they're not necessarily considered commercial, because they're very small. And they're sorry that they didn't put that in, because they've had nothing but,
We
you know,
could
issues.
add, you know,
Yeah,
it's easier to add than to take, you know, to remove stuff.
Why don't we want to include it? I'm
This
sorry,
is-
I'm new.
Yeah, so this is the feedback we're getting from the boards and committees in town, that in general, people don't like extending state laws, you know, making them more stringent. And so I think there's like a resistance to expanding on state law. People don't like being regulated. I don't know, Chris, if you want to speak to it, that's what I've heard, from, you know, other boards that have commented. You know, so I have to, unless there's anything new, I really have to kind of curtail this. We are having a public meeting on.
Barry is raising his hand again.
Okay.
If I could.
Whole time you're talking about this, Cliff didn't look up one. He
Yeah,
just
Chris,
started
this is.
with it. Cliff, you need to,
Out of
What's the
line.
concern?
I don't know
Out of
you're
line?
listening.
I'm making notes. 'Cause we're
Okay,
gonna do a short-
good, now we know, now we know.
Please address the issue at hand, Chris. 'cause
That's
we know
really-
you're not-
Okay, Wendy, please.
Yeah.
We don't need to behave like this.
I'm not behaving anything other than a taxpayer who's been taxed
Okay.
$1,000
All right.
per year on horses.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barry has his hand up. Barry.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to say, the one thing that you're not hearing is the people who don't have horses or chicken coops. And I don't hear a fair accounting of the concerns that they may reasonably have if the people who live next to them.
Meeting, Gary.
I'm not done speaking. Excuse me. What I was saying is, all I want to make sure of is that if we're putting in effect a bylaw that leans in the direction of favoring or encouraging or protecting farming of all kinds, including on residential properties, I just want to be sure we have a fair and balanced mechanism for the people who live next to those properties to be fairly heard and considered if they have a legitimate complaint. And Lisa, I respect everything you just said about how important it is to have this in our community, but I have to say that I haven't yet seen or heard enough yet that this is meant to also provide and not diminish the protections afforded to the neighbors of those activities. And that's all I want to be sure of, is that whatever role the AC plays in hearing or commenting on the dispute, that it isn't all the people who have horses and chicken coops and whatever diminishing the protections or the reasonable concerns of people who live next to those activities. That's what the board.
According to what you already said, they're already covered under zoning.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about the protections
All
to
right,
abate
we don't want to have.
nuisance. I'm talking
Very-
about abating nuisances. When there are improper things going on that are not being done the right way.
Yeah, all right.
Can I? Yes, I'll say. No, my thought is, I sit here and I listen, I have read both. The problem started originally when this ad hoc committee was established and asked for feedback. I gave significant feedback, none of it was addressed. There has been no.
That's not true. Let them talk. Let them finish.
There have been no open public hearings. I know you've had the hearings at the Grange. That doesn't qualify. I'm still assessing how this all plays out. Because Barry said it, we have group of farmers, both commercial, non-commercial, whatever. We've had chickens, I've got, you know, Christmas trees, all that stuff. That doesn't qualify me as a farmer, but I understand the component. And I've got a lot of land that protects me from neighbors, so I don't have, I'm not gonna bug people. But I look at houses going down Main Street that are side by side by side. That's gonna be a consideration that they would have the same protections. At the end of the day, I don't know where this is gonna end up. I always felt, and I still do feel, the town meeting almost always gets it right. So if we put this issue and have to make it very clear and crisp and succinct, the town meeting, they can decide whether it incorporates commercial or non-commercial. And I think somehow that's what we have to get. And it can't be one or the other, excluding one. they've got to have the choice of town meeting. It is, how it's gonna play. I don't have a clear answer on that, honestly, at this point in my head. So you said, why am I not saying anything? I've taken notes, I'm trying to think, I'm listening to the perspectives, and then it'll mull around in my brain for a while, and we'll see where it comes out. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. All right, thank you all for coming. I appreciate, I really, we have.
I actually just want to say something to you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving the people here an opportunity to speak. I know you guys work really hard. I know, especially this time of year, you're burning all ends of the candle. And I just want to say that we appreciate your open ears. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So make sure you attend the meeting on the 27th.
Where is that gonna be?
Here.
Here,
Yeah.
you better get a bigger room.
Make sure we need to sign what we're sorting.
I think they must have, I think they must have.
Yeah,
And is there, are there more people who want to show up on that bar? I should make sure I.
Who do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. Otherwise, they will get. Okay, right.
You know, I get that little paper. Oh, I'm just.
Yeah, because the sugar is in my face.
Jamie's trying to run off with it.
No, if I ever do all of their comment on this bag, I could go one vacation.
All right, so where do we go from here?
All right, next item.
Well, no, we need to decide on this. No, I'm like, my phone is vibrating, I'm sorry, an alarm call, so I just have to minutes or turn it off.
All right, we'll recess for a few minutes. So I'll
Yeah,
you
it's a good idea.
yeah.
So the question is, how we move forward from here? So I apologize for all the different versions. I mean, I'm trying to update.
Yeah, no, I understand what
Yeah.
you're up against. I've been really confused trying to
No, I
understand what
totally
we're,
get it.
you know, which, you know, who's on first.
Yeah, so we have the longer version that has all the red lines. That's like the original version that was sent around.
Yeah,
I got comments from the planning board, from the chief assessor, which I incorporated into the compromise version. Barry Fogel had extensive comments on that, so those are all redlined there. Subsequent to that, I met with the ad hoc committee and came up with this compromise version. You know, which does not list out the definitions, that way we don't get into, well, is it commercial? or
Well, the
not.
state defines it anyway, so you don't
They
have-
do, in the citizens petition bylaw, they list it out, but they change it from the state, like they remove commercial from horses. So there are just enough changes that it's not consistent with the state, so it just seems cleaner to just reference the state and not. But I know people have expressed concern, well, if you don't explain what it covers, then, is that a problem? So,
But not if we reference the state, which
Yeah.
does.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
then
they're-
people would
they're-
have to look it up. I think people know intuitively what farming is,
Yeah.
but, so that is potentially something to
And
address.
but if somebody disputes it, then you have
It's,
a
yeah,
reference to go back to and say this is, yeah.
right. And then there's also the fact that hopefully when state law is updated to also include something other than a huge farm, some smaller farms. Which the consultant from MDR that they had at the last meeting said that there's an active plan to try to, expand the coverage to smaller farms. So this way we would already be in alignment, as
Yeah,
it was
okay,
updated.
that makes sense.
Wendy, one thing I would wanna review with town council, but going back to my, years of drafting zoning, it was not uncommon when you were referencing state law to add the clause, comma, as may be amended from time to time.
Oh, that's.
I would wanna check with town council to make sure they agree that's a legitimate way to do it, but I wrote zoning in 50 different cities and towns, and we use that kind of routinely,
Yeah,
so that.
and I've seen that out. I mean,
Yeah, so I think that, that prevents you having to go back and chase your own tail, trying to amend your bylaw every time state law changes.
And the other thing that was taken out between these two versions is the listing of what farming activities is. Just because that, pesticide use, dust, it kind of highlights the negative parts of it, which it's not really helpful, I think. So, the suggestion was made to just remove that instead of these problems. I think as long as we reference state law, we're covered.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there was a certain irony in just the reference to pesticides. I mean, I didn't see why that needed to be there to begin with. I mean, it's sort of implicit anyway.
Yeah.
But why, I couldn't see why it had to be called out.
Mhm.
And not all necessarily grow organic gardens or farms, but, it's just, there's irony in it that was called out.
So, I mean, one of the points Barry raised, I don't know what you think about this, is just not having the ad commission be part of the dispute resolution process. I mean, there are bylaws that are towns that don't have an ad commission and they have something different written there.
But, so from a statutory standpoint, the Board of Health is.
Yeah, that's how it is now, that's how it would continue, if,
Is that in our bylaw or is that statutory?
that's statutory.
Yeah, so
That's chapter 1.
yeah, okay, so I don't, that's right, yeah, Barry mentioned that, I don't see why we would try to supersede that, what the state calls out for enforcement.
Well, what the group said, Board of Health doesn't have the same perspective as the farming committee, but, I don't know. I see both sides of that too.
I mean, if we did that, then there's no driving force to have commercial and non-commercial, because that's really the distinction there, is that I think the group here is looking for resolution dispute from the Ag Commission for non-commercial farming.
So you're saying if you leave it as is, let Board of Health deal with dispute resolution, we could make this non-commercial and not have an issue.
Can I offer some input only because I have some history? If you don't mind, I think it might be beneficial. Okay. When we were in the early discussions with the ad hoc committee and Wendy was there as well, and we were discussing the resolution of disputes. It was actually Wendy who had suggested that all of the, grievance notices went directly to an agricultural commission because our town departments are kind of overloaded anyways, and that it would streamline the process. So I think that was originally the reasoning behind it was phrased that way, is we were looking to streamline and offset overburdened town departments. If it was funneled through the Board of Health and then disputes were then handed off to the Agricultural Commission to see if they could meet with the parties, see what their thoughts are, see if we can get a meeting of the minds, and see if we can arrive at a resolution, at which point we can report back to the Board of Health or you or both and say, hey, great news, guys. They were able to find a resolution to this and everyone's happy. That, I think, keeps the communication and the parties feel like they're being heard versus just a report being submitted to a department with a recommendation. I think a lot of angst can be felt when people don't feel that they're being heard. So I don't think that an agricultural commission would particularly have a problem with grievances being funneled through the Board of Health versus it being funneled directly to an agricultural commission. But the intent and the reasoning behind it was just to streamline where the process went to. So I just
So you're
wanted to,
suggesting it goes to the Board of Health and then to the Ag Commission?
I'm saying that the model, Massachusetts law is that it goes to the select board, a zoning enforcement officer, or the Board of Health. And we were like, oh, you know, we want to stream, we don't want people sending things here, there, or everywhere. And then further down says that they can forward a copy of the grievance to the agricultural commission or their agent for possible resolution and mediation. That's what the Massachusetts model says. So we were just simply in our early discussions with Wendy, trying to make this as quick as possible and as streamlined as possible. So I'm just offering you the reasoning behind why it was written the way it was.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
think-
that you find that helpful.
Yeah, many communities that have an ag commission have this clause, but I think Barry was making the point that it's working the way it is, so why?
That's what
why
I say,
change it?
so
Yeah.
if you eliminate it, and let the Board of Health deal with the disputes, let the Ag Commission be proactive for farming
Right.
commission, they can do that for commercial and non-commercial.
Mhm.
And whether it's commercial or non-commercial, it goes to the Board of Health if there's a complaint, that works.
Right.
The only other suggestion, I would take it for the sake of people who are, I won't say novice, but not as up to speed, I would put the state's definition of farming in here. You know, this is to address farming per the state's definition, and then boom, just paste it in there.
So, but the state's definition of farming is commercial, they explicitly have commercial in there.
And it sounds like it's going to change, like it makes.
It's not gonna change this year,
No, not this year, but
for sure.
yeah, yeah.
But either way,
So we have to revisit it then.
Well, unless whatever it says, just, you know, as
Right,
maybe
right.
amended.
Well, yeah, but see, if we put the definition in there, if we write that into the document,
then it's stuck with it.
then until you change the document, you're stuck with it.
Okay. So I would be on board with leaving the disputes, the Board of Health, taking it away from the commission, and then you can include non-commercial, and it will work, or could work.
Barry?
Are we still here?
Yeah, I if I heard what someone was saying from the audience, the idea of disputes going to the Board of Health and then with input from the AC, I really like that as a compromise approach. I will also say that I couldn't hear exactly what Chris said. It was a little garbled, but in terms of a distinction as to where disputes from commercial or non-commercial would go. And if you were trying to draw a distinction, I don't think we need to. I think all
He wasn't.
disputes.
No,
Oh,
I'm
good.
agreeing with what you said, let the Board of Health deal with the
For both.
disputes, take that away from the Ag Commission, and then you can make the Ag Commission commercial and non-commercial.
Yeah, and also, but just I don't know if that's Catherine Marone in there, but whoever commented, I think that idea of any disputes still go to the Board of Health under existing law, but that the Ag Commission is there to act almost like a chorus to evaluate the concerns and maybe help Paul and the Board of Health understand what's happening on the farm and what the neighbor's concern is. I will also say this, we don't have to hew exactly to the model bylaw. I think we could write language that says we're a community that has both commercial and non-commercial, and at least avoid trying to create any expectation that the non-commercial are going to get the benefits of the Dover Amendment and 111 section 125A. And now that's a little bit into the weeds of the statutes, but we can do in the bylaw is identify that we're a community that invites and likes residential farming activities without suggesting that it gets the same protections that commercial farms get under 40A Section 3 and 111 Section 125A. But they get the benefits of the bylaw in notice to new residents who own or lease, and the function of the Agricultural Commission to advocate, educate, communicate. So I think there's room there.
Yeah.
Maybe able to put that word together.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking taking it off of you.
Well, I've been working with them very long.
Wendy and I are sympathetical.
All right, so do you want me to continue working on this? I think I have a good understanding of, are you on board with what Chris is saying?
I am, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll keep working on this, Catherine.
And I think I have a good understanding too going forward, so I think we can dialogue some more and see what we can arrive at.
Okay.
Wendy, this is just pure administrative, but I'll make a point. So I'm continuing to talk with both Christian and Jim on who's the appropriate office to hold the forms.
I put it in as Jim.
No, I know, and that.
What do you think, Jim?
Well, so I'm just trying to understand where it makes more sense. It's
Yeah.
not a workload issue, it's a
I think it makes,
trivial thing, but.
yeah, I think it makes more sense. I mean, one of Christian's comments was he did not want to send it out with the tax mailing. He just feels like there's too much already.
Mhm.
And so in this latest version, I just have it as being posted in the town office building. And I know that's not what you guys had proposed, but I think that's a,
I mean, one thing, I've talked with Caitlin about it, I think like initially, it would be easy enough to have an insert, maybe the first year or two. I think like with every single tax billing
that would be too much, yeah.
in perpetuity, it's kind of like, it gets to be a bit overkill, because at that point, everyone moving in is getting it at you know, when they sign the P&S.
I do have to send out something manually, so if we can build it into the budget.
That's just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, I think, you know, at a staff level, there wouldn't be any concern to sending it out, you know, as needed.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly initially when it's rolled out, maybe the first couple of years, I think doing it every year, it does end up being, you know.
And people just throw it away.
But in terms of the kind of the keeper of the, you know, I thought town clerk made a lot of sense, because it's really just a binder, putting it in the binder and having a record, but it did occur to me that, since the assessor's office uniquely, unlike any other town office, actually gets notice of real estate transactions, that would potentially position them to have some kind of reconciliation. So when they get notice from the registry that this property changed hands, they could then check, hey, was there a disclosure form? Whereas the clerk's office doesn't get that, no one else. So he'd only know that by going to ask Christian, which at that point is, so I'm meeting with each of them to figure out
Okay.
that my focus is gonna be what's most efficient. And, you know, I'm not playing favorites.
Yeah.
so what happens if there isn't a disclosure form? I mean, originally there was a proposal that people.
Yeah, I had
fined,
that
but
question
you know,
too.
so they're gonna be fined as you're looking at their rear license plate driving out of
But
the
the
town.
fine's been eliminated, right?
Yeah, I know it has, but
So
I
that's
mean,
why
I'm just,
I'm not sure, I wasn't envisioning like checking and reconciling.
Yeah, I think that's one of the smallest components of the bylaw.
Okay.
I think it's more to educate people, and again, on a transfer of real estate, hey, you understand this now.
Mhm.
Whether the form is there or not, it's just making people aware, I think it's more important.
That would be my only consideration, is that I have no access to anything when it comes to house sales, and they actually do. That would be my only thought, is that, and if somebody's going to check on something about a house sale or a property, they would go to Christian's office, not my office.
So we'll figure that out. I just wanna let you know I'm continuing to look at that administratively where it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
A little input on that.
Just a little, I mean,
I'm serious, I think it'll be helpful, because you guys are gonna dialogue about this beyond this meeting, and this may be helpful. I don't think that anyone expects that the town is gonna take on a role of checks and balances. It's either there or it isn't. If it's in a 3-ring binder, it gives anyone on the agricultural commission who's looking into a dispute an ability to go and look at the year, you know, it's easy enough to look up the year a property was sold. pull the binder of that year. See if the disclosure was signed. Because then if you're arbitrating and trying to mediate for two people, you know whether that person was aware when they moved in. It's as simple as that, okay?
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, as a real estate agent, I have the ability, a very unique ability, to really help launch this with the real estate and the lawyer community. Because I have access to all of the real estate boards, and I can ask them to put out in a newsletter that West Newbury is now a right to farm community and they have a notification form. I actually have the ability to police that through what I do in my business. So I can be really instrumental to you guys. We're only gonna need to do that for a year, really. And then it's just gonna become known within that community that this document's needed. So I don't expect that any level of policing is really needed.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, that's my expectation too. Okay. How'd I do, 15 minutes?
Yeah, that's good, yeah, an hour and 15
And I'm
minutes.
sorry, I'm sorry.
You lost your gavel.
Right, no, it's right here, I pulled it out, you didn't even see it, I pulled it out.
All right.
You gotta watch her with this thing.
All right, municipal energy aggregation correspondence.
So, yeah, the finance department received a whole thick stack, one for every account.
bill.
And Kim brought them in and she said, do these need any action? I said, no, and then I said, oh, wait a second, yeah, they do. Wait, the town has to make the same choice that the consumers have to make. So that's what's before you tonight is, do you wanna opt out? I assume not, but you should vote that.
Yeah,
And if you do not wanna opt out, which plan do you wanna select? And that's what's before you.
all right.
For starters, I will move that we not opt out. Is that a negative and is that a good thing?
Yeah, that's an action to not return.
Okay, there, you know, we not return the opt-out.
I do think it's important to have the board on record.
Oh,
with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Is that a good example?
yeah.
On the in or opt out, whatever you wanna call it, you've got the three choices if you're in, you have to specify that if you want.
Yeah, you have to reach out to, the energy, the name of the company.
You'll be automatically put in one plan, no, to energy.
Which plan, standard?
Selection.
Yeah, the standard plan
Yeah.
is what you opt, is what you immediately go into.
If you do nothing,
Right.
you go into the standard.
It's the optional basic, which saves you fly spec.
It saves you point 0.0011.
You would then have to go and
So
tell them that's the plan you want. if
Right,
you
and
want.
so, okay, so just hold that, well, actually, you don't have to hold that thought, but I'm gonna tell you how much, based on last fiscal year's energy usage, what that would cost the town. Actually, here it is,
You would say less than the
threw it in
postage
earlier.
stamp.
It would cost you, the town, for all 29 or 30 electric accounts the town has, including the water department, it would cost an aggregate of $635.75 for the year for all of our energy usage. That's last in FY 24, we used 577,959 kilowatt hours.
You think
That's for
not-
basic, optional basic or optional green?
Right.
No, optional, no, not the optional, just the standard, the first one.
Okay.
You're saying
That's the
if you
default.
downgraded to optional, you'd save $675.
Exactly, if you downgrade to optional, you'd save $636.
From standard.
From
Yes.
standard.
But is the town gonna be looking at optional green?
So that's what we're here tonight to talk about.
Well, but
Well, that's what
I wasn't suggesting that, I mean, we could, but I wasn't suggesting that.
What is the delta?
Well,
so wait, so the default is the standard,
Correct.
and you're saying if we go to
Correct.
optional.
No, I meant if we go to the default, the optional the first optional would save you $636 a year.
Even with the cheapest
Off
program,
the standard.
you plug in at the standard, you go to the cheapest, it'll save $600.
And,
Or you could pay more and go to the green 100.
All right, got it.
yeah, actually, so let me, real quick, I'll figure out what the cost would be to go with
It's gonna be a bit,
Yeah, it's gonna be more.
a few $1,000s. Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be more, but, let me, get to that page, cause.
I mean, is there any interest in making different decisions for different accounts?
Oh, yeah, I think we should have 30 different decisions.
Let's go on each one. Then we can vote each sign that we're gonna look at. That's it.
All right, how long is this gonna take you, Rick?
It's gonna take me a second, I just need to, plug in the.
I think it's gonna be a big number.
I gotta do the
Particularly
math.
when compared to National Grid's price, it's gonna be over that.
So you got that 636 number, so
Yeah.
the next one is, so 0.15994. I'll just compare it to the least expensive option.
Which is optional basic,
Yeah, correct.
all right.
So that would be the most green option, 100% class one, mass Rex. Would cost the town an additional $16,876.
Oh, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. All right, so do you wanna go with the standard?
Yeah, I think we should still have standard.
Probably some water pump station you could have too.
Just to make a good show, it's green, participates in both the green and the standard option.
All right,
I know you sent the notices to the schools and
I
things like
did,
that.
yeah, I mean, I assumed that the actions of this board would apply to Kentucky, you're the property owners.
mhm.
So I wanna let
But
Jonathan
it's a
know,
question of who owns the account.
it's sent to us.
Is it really?
Well, actually, you know what, well, so, I mean, you know. this board, you know,
I never see those bills, so I don't know.
They get the bills, they pay the bills.
Yeah, I assume that so it's sent to you and then you give them the
Well,
account.
so this
the
is,
bill?
no, it's sent to them, they pay the bills, and then once a year, they send us a single invoice
Right.
for our share of that.
Right, so they're the account owner, so they should be the one who gets.
Well, but I'm looking at this, so this is 694 Main, of course, there's multiple buildings there with
Thank
the
you, Catherine.
water and the park and rec, thank you. So this is, you know, my eyes start to glaze over, so Rick, you spent a lot more time with this, but these here at 694 Main, are these paid school or are these,
Yeah, well, so,
do you
so,
recognize these account numbers? He probably does.
I don't, but they're in here, they're in Mass Energy Insight, but, no, but, you know, so there's the highway garage or the water
Yeah.
garage.
Yep,
There's Page School,
yep,
there's,
the park and
The park and
rec building
rec
is still
building.
connected, yeah,
right.
not for much longer, but.
Right, which is interesting, because that's another topic. And then, of course, did I say Page School already? So there's basically four, oh, no, the housing, yeah. So there's-
Which would be, that's here at 694.
Yeah.
And they are.
Oh,
listed.
right, okay, right, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
But
I didn't see that.
we're listed, you know, town of West Newbury, care of West Newbury, I sent it to Tracy, because I just don't really know. Like the housing authority is a distinct entity, but I guess I assume that the decision that this board makes would apply to Page School and would apply to water. I suppose if water wanted to do something different, you know, I should probably have sent them the same kind of notice, since they pay those couple of accounts. What this is all of the electrical accounts that Colonial had sent us as the list to, you know, that the town's affiliated with, and then Caitlin had gone through it and marked up everything she pays.
Okay,
So everything not highlighted is something she does not pay.
yeah, so I think the water department should get,
Yeah, so I can send them the same kind of notice I sent to Jonathan and to Tracy Watson.
all right, so are we in agreement then on do we need a vote?
Do you need a motion? I'll make a
Yeah.
motion.
So that
We
the
have a
motion
motion.
was to not opt out was the motion. That was not seconded.
Okay,
Well,
Second,
I think you gotta make it even more specific and not about go for the standard rate.
Well, that's gonna be a separate action,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
so not opt out
All right.
means
Yeah,
that we.
I'll second Rick's motion.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Freedom. Alright, great. And now it's the second one is what plan do you want to select?
We go with the basic. Or the
Standard.
the standard, sorry.
standard.
Then a motion, Rick?
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Can we clarify that for all accounts that the town has authority over, that's the case?
Yeah,
Schools.
good, yeah.
All right.
So with that, I could just tell you what the school account number is, Angus, give that page that you just had up there.
So glad Caitlin's here working on this stuff. There was no one to do this kind of
It's
stuff. There was no one on staff.
Yeah.
Whose job it was to get into this kind of stuff. It was difficult.
So what is it?
So it would be one of these three, presumably.
No, it's not one of those three. Leave that up, so, I could, I could probably, one of those, I could look for the,
One of these might be the electric charging. Was that set up as a new account? It
Oh,
was,
probably
the
was,
electric
right,
vehicle
right,
charging.
yeah,
is a-
that's right, that is a separate account.
So. Good idea.
Premium energy, one of those.
All right, are we ready to move on?
So it's possible that it is in Pentucket's name and it's not on this list and it was sent to Pentucket, so he may have already, so I'll get with Jonathan and we'll make sure that they're aware that they need to either do
Yeah.
something or not do something.
Okay. All right, Rick, are you good?
Yeah, it says we don't need to do this.
All right,
All right, good.
so next item is to consider appointing the select board designee for the opioid funds working group. I think that would be you, since you are the liaison to the Board of Health.
Okay, he's running away from it.
I'll be it for the next 2 months.
That's probably, we should probably, do you think this is gonna be a long-term thing?
I don't think it needs to be. I mean, we have about $10,000 in this
Yeah.
account.
I looked at it and said, first of all, no disrespect, I don't wanna be the rep, you got way too much on your plate, he's
Why is
leaving.
it disrespect for me?
No, for anybody, I'm just
Oh,
saying,
Yeah,
I don't know if we need a select board rep on this, they're on the right path, education, they got a plan, they're doing good, leave it.
Yeah, and there's a webinar coming up with very clear parameters. I sent that to Rachel, I was very impressed with the draft survey she came
Yeah.
up with. I think they're doing a great
There's
job.
nothing we can do to make it better, it's simple, they're straightforward, and they got it distilled down to the right
Yeah.
focus.
I think if you wanted, like my office, I know Rebecca went to one of the meetings. I
Oh,
think she'd be
right,
that's
willing,
Yeah,
happy to continue to go.
Should be willing.
Yeah.
She'd be happy.
that's great. Are you all comfortable with that? Just,
Fine.
Cause I do think it's very important that we have our ear to the ground, because
Yeah.
ultimately the funds are under this board's authority.
so that makes me feel like, what do I should be there?
No, but I think through my office, I think,
Even just getting the minutes from their meeting, I
Yeah.
mean, you read through it, they got it worked out, they don't need us
Okay.
looking over them.
All right, good.
so I'll make sure Rebecca, is, and that one of us.
So Angus, you said that you thought it was just the 10, the
So bless
existing,
you.
you said it's just the existing 10,000, a little over.
Yeah, there's a little
But
that trickles in.
isn't there something more that's gonna come out?
Yeah, we're gonna continue to get dribs and drops.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the settlement
Yeah.
payments. Yeah, it's gonna be a continuing source of revenue for
Right.
years to come.
Exactly.
But it's not gonna amount to more than, I don't know the numbers, but I know right now it's a little over 10,000 for however long these have been in place,
Okay,
so.
I think when we first, going back 3 or 4 years, when we first looked at it, that I remember doing a little estimation based on number of communities and population, sort of prorating. And if it came to the maximum amount, it could have been close to $200,000 over the life of it, if I remember right.
Do you happen to remember what the life of it was?
I don't, that was several years.
I think there's 6 different settlement agreements that we're party to, I believe.
Yeah, so that was just the first settlement agreement,
Yeah.
actually, I think, so, who knows?
But I can, just out of everyone's curiosity, including my own, I can just send you guys a note of just the amounts that have come in, so we have a better idea of that balance, how much.
Yeah, it's interesting to see
Year
what that-
instead of
yeah.
over the last few years, cause I really don't have
Yeah,
know, it's just such a small thing, I haven't really paid
yeah,
a whole lot of attention.
All right, good. All right, the next item is, dates and starting times for the annual and special town meeting.
Oh, we still got Casey here.
Hello, Casey.
You're muted.
Okay, now I'm here.
All right. So what are you thinking?
Well, the basis of all of my thinking is that the last town meeting was brutal. And a lot of people spoke to me afterwards about we needed to do something other than have a town meeting for 10 hours or whatever it was. It ended at midnight. It was just too much for a lot of people. And I did talk a little bit today. And I don't think it's necessary to put the annual town meeting and the special town meeting back to back. If the annual town meeting is going to go on and on again like that, and I understand there are even more articles this year than there were last year. It's going to be a definite problem for some people to be able to do that 2 nights in a row. It's debilitatingly long. And I don't think, unless I'm not seeing something, I don't think there's any reason why we have to have the special town meeting on any particular night. It's a special town meeting, so it could be the next week or whatever. The other thing that I'm thinking about is trying to expedite it. I think you all know that West Newbury is the only town I know of, and I'm sure there are some others, but it's the only town I know of that even tries to get these meetings done in one night. Most of the other towns where the moderators participate in our groups and stuff, it's given that it's going to be 2 or 3 nights before they even start. And it gives them the option of just adjourning and then picking up the next night so people don't get overtired like that. So maybe we need to stop thinking about the idea that we have to finish it all in one night. And we didn't used to. I mean, there were years back that we had more than one night.
That's the current thought, Casey, is to have it on 2 nights.
No,
Well, so if I can-
yeah.
If I could just jump in on that a little bit, Casey. So part of our thinking, it's a big warrant, bigger than we instigated. There's a lot of external things, and we know, for instance, the MBTA communities is going to be such a high profile issue, probably going to, generate a fair amount of attendance. And, I think we're all concerned, same thing you're expressing, that if that's on there the same night as the budget and some very consequential, financial and policy articles. But if some number of people come there wanting to vote on the MBTA zoning, and then it's relatively late in the agenda, it affects the whole tenor of the meeting, people get cranky. And so the thought of maybe posting an annual on one night and a special on a different night, whether that's the next night or a different night, was to space it out, because even though I'm, every town I've ever worked for before West Newbury, it was exactly as you're describing. The people knew going in, it was going to be 2 to 3 nights, and that was just, everyone knew that. The challenge we've had is in talking this over in the current cycle is if we post a single, the warrant for both of them on the same night, and if we know in practice it's going to go to a second night, but we can't tell people, hey, Article 37 is not going to come up till the second night, because as you know better than anyone, someone can make a motion to take it out of order, bring it up front. So we couldn't tell people, hey, that's not going to come up till night 2. And therefore you may have some people who are there who are really impatient because they just want to vote on MBTA, or they just want to vote on right to farm, or some other issue. So that was the thinking of maybe looking at two different posted nights. But that, we're trying to puzzle this through, and we're really glad you're here to help us puzzle that
Actually,
through.
I'm not opposed to that idea at all, Angus. I think we have to do that. But I think by trying to over orchestrate it, we could run into a lot of trouble because people can change things at town meeting. They have the ability to make motions and, as you said, bring things forward that, and if someone moves to bring an article forward and it just requires a simple majority vote, then that's brought forward and we can't say, oh, no, you can't do that. Of course they can do that. So our ability to control exactly what happens when is limited by parliamentary procedure. So I think it's better to start with the annual town meeting, and we may have to adjourn the annual town meeting before we finish it. Because if it gets to be, 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, I'm opposed to that. I think I personally was exhausted. And I spoke to several people after the meeting who were angry because they were exhausted. And they felt that things came up after everyone was too tired to really consider what they were talking about because everybody was exhausted. And I don't think that's the way to have a town meeting. You don't want to make it into a painful marathon where everybody just has to sit and bear it until it's over. So I would prefer to just leave it that the meeting will go on until somebody moves to adjourn. And if somebody moves to adjourn before we're done, well, then we have to take it up. But if we've already scheduled the special town meeting for the very next night, then that leaves us no option but to then adjourn the annual town meeting to sometime in the more distant future. I'm not talking about real distant future, but it really does leave us with very little flexibility in terms of how to handle a situation like that. And if you're looking at, is it really 60?
Yeah.
We're about 58, but there are some things we've talked about that could reduce that number substantially. For instance, if the capital articles were aggregated into a capital budget, that could take what's now a dozen or more articles and take it to one. It would, it would still be a line item with detail, but it could cut that number from 58 substantially. If we did some things procedurally.
Where does this proposed capital budget fall into the agenda?
We've
got line items and we've got line items and we've got articles.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's presented in other towns that use this format is it appears a lot like the line item budget where it's just the capital budget and it's got the.
Last time I suggested strongly that we try to use consent agendas to get through things like that, where they're very, very straightforward. They get very little discussion. People do have a way to say they don't want something to be on a consent agenda. It's not like it's crammed down their throat. And you can use it for a number of different things like that, where there are lots of articles that, we sit there and we go up, down, and nobody ever says anything about them. And they always they just get voted on. And we can identify them. We don't have to just, go at random. We can identify articles that we know typically do not generate a lot of discussion and that are sort of housekeeping items or budgetary necessities or whatever you want to call them, and just lump them all together. And then as soon as the consent agenda is presented as a motion, the voters have an opportunity to say, I don't want Article 6 to be on the consent agenda. And we vote on that right away. And if the town says, no, we don't want Article 6 to be on the consent agenda, off it goes. It goes back onto the regular warrant. It's very simple process, and it really does.
I love that.
Speed
I've
things
always loved
up.
that. Yeah.
So Casey, if the annual was on Monday and we needed more time, couldn't it adjourn to the next night, even if we've already slated it to be the special on the next night?
Well, then we get into the problem of which one do we open up? It's already kind of, the way we do it, I think people are used to, that we open the annual, we adjourn it, and then, or we recess it. And then we do the special and then we come back to the annual and everybody's used to that. And I don't think anybody's gonna get terribly upset about it. But if we've adjourned the annual to a time certain, would be the next night. And then we come in, we have to go back to the annual.
Yeah, but can't we just recess it? And go to the special and
Yeah,
then,
that's it,
yeah,
that works.
yeah.
Right? But see, it's not exactly the same. I'll have to think about this. The way we do it when we're having a normal town meeting is we recess the annual before we take anything up. The only thing we take up before we go to the special is some reports.
So we could do the same thing and have the special on Monday. We'll open the annual, do the special, and then do the rest of the annual on Tuesday or whatever's left from the special and then the
The
annual.
reason I'm hesitant about this is because I'm thinking about the people who are coming to the meeting because they're interested in whatever they're interested in. And if it gets to be too complicated about what's going to happen when, it's not fair to them.
But what's complicated about this is on the special, you know, we're just gonna open the annual and then go right to the special. I feel like people could understand that because that's the way we do it anyway.
So then we're going to just adjourn the special and not open the annual?
No, I thought you said open the annual, we'll go to the
Not go
special.
back- I'm sorry, you're right. Not go back to the annual because the special, it's got 30 articles on it too, doesn't it?
Right,
We haven't divvied them up.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure we could figure this out, but it sounds like we're all in agreement on 2 nights though, right?
2 nights, but I guess at the moment, and I would like the right to change my mind. But at the moment, I do not like the idea of having them back to back. I think it's just too much for people to have to deal with. And the idea is not to have going to town meeting painful.
So does it have to be 2 separate weeks or would Monday and Wednesday be enough of a?
And the thing is, you know, people have lives, so they can't necessarily come on any particular night. Other than the night, they can't necessarily come on Monday either, I understand that. But, you know, asking people to keep coming back time after time has always been a bit of a problem for them. But, you know, that's life. So those who can come do, but you also lose quorum that way. So.
The last annual town meeting we had, there were a number of problems why it ran long. And if you take the actual time of the meeting, which would have been from about 8 o'clock when we really got going, it was midnight. That's 4 hours. So if we could get people, and we mentioned this previously at the select board meeting, suppose we started the meeting at 6, because we know people are gonna flow in late no matter what you do. Optimistically, you get going by 7. And that was part of the problem, is the delay of getting the people in the door. Now, I think there's more efficiencies to check people in on this one, so we should be able to get them in their seats quicker. And then the instructions took an awful long time. I don't know if there's a way to condense that. And then
I'm
we're
sorry,
only gonna have
could you repeat that? I didn't catch what you just said. There's a question of what?
the instructions took a long time when you gave the instructions to the voters. I think we have to compress that down. If I recall, I think it was 40 minutes of instructions before we got to the town meeting. So everybody arrived late, couldn't get checked in, and we didn't actually get going on the meeting till about 8 o'clock. So I don't know if there's a way to get people in earlier, 6 o'clock, get them to sit down. Most of the instructions are in the booklet anyway, so let's, you know, get that as a more succinct. And then if we have issues we can start on, if we don't have a quorum, can we do non-monetary items to the front? There's just a way to expedite the whole meeting.
The annual town meeting quorum is the same. It doesn't matter on the amount. It's
And we're only gonna have,
it's
there's
9.
always usually a handful of articles that take a lot of time. It was the dog bylaw last time. If we didn't have that, we'd have been out of there at 10:30, I don't know. We're gonna have a couple this year. So again, I don't know how much the consent agenda is gonna save. Those items go pretty crisp and clean.
Yeah, I
so.
think we'd spend more time voting to remove stuff than.
Right, so I understand in practice, but I don't think it's gonna save you much.
But I do like the idea of having the capital items be in one article. I mean, people can always say hold, just like they do with the budget, if they have a question, you know, but we don't have to vote and, you know, take it off or.
Whatever, that was my thoughts.
Are you,
Yeah.
Wendy, are you assuming that the voters will just pretty much just vote for all of the capital items without any discussion?
No, I'm assuming if they have a question, they'll say hold, like they do with the line item budget. And then we'll go back to that.
One of the benefits, Casey, and I can show you some samples from some other towns in terms of physically how it's presented and how it reads, but one of the advantages I see is it gives your bottom line total, it gives just like the line item budget does, it enumerates this amount for this truck and this amount for this culvert and so forth, but it also gives you the bottom line total. So it presents more like a cohesive, annual capital budget rather than what could be perceived as a lot of piecemeal things that may not appear to have any rhyme or reason, but there really is a cohesive capital program the town has been implementing for years, and I think the voters may come away with a better sense of like that they do all fit together. It's not all
Okay,
just a
I
lot.
guess I have a question for you or whoever. The way that the articles are presented at the town meeting now is the way it's always been since I've been the moderator. So there's been no change in that. And we always have the individual articles and then the line item budget. And some of the articles, like for example, the one that comes to mind is the CPC. Is it CPC? Am I getting that right?
The standard funding article for CPC?
No, the one where we have special funds that are, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
CPC.
Or CPA, yeah.
CPA, I knew
Yeah.
something, right? Okay, so the CPA article, for example, has different funds in the same article. So we vote the funds for this one and this one and this one.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other articles that have more than one thing that you can vote on. But other than the line item budget, which is a completely separate way of doing things, and the articles, there really has never been another form. And the consent agenda format, I know, has been approved by most of the towns in the Commonwealth. So I'm going to have to assume it was approved by the Great and General Court or whatever it is. I don't know about this. This is a new approach, which I don't necessarily think is a bad approach. I'm just, do you know that it has been approved?
Oh, yeah, it's how a number of towns do it. And personally, I've never been part of a town that did it, so it's not like something I'm trying to bring from outside. It's something I've learned from my colleagues, including some of our immediate abutting towns that present their capital articles all as a single article, and they treat it like the line item budget with the holes, just as Wendy was saying.
Well, I
So
don't think
we
it's
don't
any
need to make
worse
that
than a
decision
consent
tonight.
agenda.
The only reason I brought that up was that I think there are things that could be done procedurally to take the number 58, which we would all agree is a daunting number, and trim it down. Maybe not even just that way.
Okay, so everybody can answer this question if you can. I don't understand why, and I'm sure there's a reason, that it doesn't bother you to introduce this new format, which I don't have anything against it, incidentally. It doesn't bother you to introduce this new format, but you're so opposed to trying a consent agenda, which is used almost universally in all the towns.
Chris doesn't like this format. I don't want to speak for you, Chris, but Chris doesn't like the idea of a single, this is not something that, we're just kind of sharing ideas here. It's not that nothing's been decided. Chris has been, when I brought it up a few meetings ago, he was clear he didn't like it. So it's not something, I'm just putting it out there because I think you could consolidate what would be 14 separate motions, seconds, and just condense it, but that's not.
At the fall meeting, fall town meeting, there was not a single no vote in the room. We could have, had an article for $100,000 to buy flying monkeys and they would have approved it. And that concerns me that they, I won't say aloof, but I think that the voters need to understand what they're spending this money on. And to just put it all under one heading.
Okay, so Chris, let's say I'm a voter and we've got
You're a voter.
I am a voter, okay, but
Oh,
let's say
okay.
I'm one of the voters on the floor. And we've got 12 capital items and they're all consolidated into this line. So we're going to go line by line and put hold on if somebody wants to actually discuss anything. Is
Same
that,
with the line item
is that how
budget,
this-
Yeah, that's the idea, yeah,
that's the idea?
yeah.
And then the other ones are assumed to be passed if nobody put a hold on it.
Well, there'd be a vote at the end for everything for which there was no
Now
hold,
that-
and then, yeah.
We do that with the line item budget, because that is legal. That's a deviation from the way the articles usually get taken up. But it's,
What's the motion gonna be like for 10 or 12 capital items? I mean, there has to be some description.
That is the capital budget,
Yeah.
or FY, whatever it is.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go derail, because this is something I could put together,
Yeah,
some
let's-
samples, and we can have that, because I didn't want to distract, really tonight, it's what's on the agenda, which is
Figuring out the
confirm the
night.
dates and starting times. for the annual
Maybe
special.
that's what we gotta focus on to get it done, because we still
We
have
still
other stuff
got
to do.
quite a lot ahead of us tonight, yeah.
So
So-
maybe we gotta just sort of focus on.
Yeah, Casey, so are you saying it needs to be 2 separate weeks? We need to pin down the
no, I
day.
don't think
That's-
it needs to be 7 weeks, Wendy, but I don't think there's really a good way to do this, even though I think it has to be done.
Okay, well, what's the least bad way to do
I'm
it?
thinking about people having lives other than going to town meeting and having to fit it into whatever else they're doing that week. And if the thing goes on interminably on Monday, they're not going to want to come back on Tuesday, but many of them will. They're good, devoted voters, so they come and they do their job. But it's going to be really difficult, especially for people that work, and now they've been up all night on Monday, and now they got to go to work on Tuesday. Now they got to come and work, spend all Tuesday night there. It's putting a big strain on people, and I don't think it should be like that.
All right, so what's the solution then? Do you want Monday and Wednesday, or Monday and then the following Monday?
Following Monday is election day.
All right, well, I'm just saying, do you want it to be like separate weeks, or 2 days in the same week separated by at least 1 day?
I think it should be separated by at least 1 day, just to give people a breather to.
How about Monday and Wednesday? We have a select board meeting on Thursday night.
Mhm.
And then.
Fill up the week.
Exactly. Well, it's my last select board meeting. I really don't want you to cut. So.
All right.
I can
so-
do Monday, Wednesday, that's not a bad option.
I think that sounds fine, I
Okay.
think. that's a
Alright.
good point, yeah.
Casey,
I have an appointment for a haircut.
Monday and Wednesday?
I'll do it for you.
Monday and Wednesdays, okay.
All
We
right,
have to confirm that the facility is available at the school.
Yep, yep.
so what do you think about starting at 6, Casey?
Well, I have never understood the propensity for starting meetings, which is not just this town meeting or selectmen board meeting or anything, at 6 o'clock, because in my life, that was always dinner time. It's just a silly thing, but it's like, well, do we not get any dinner because we have to have this meeting? It's just, it's starting at 6 just really goes against my upbringing, but that's kind of silly. I guess everybody wants to meet at 6. That's fine. I'll be there.
Because again, I agree with you, because I always, when they first started meetings at 6 and now at 5, it was weird. But what happened was with COVID, a lot of people aren't going into the office and they're telecommuting, so more people are available in town. That dynamic's changed. It is strange. I don't disagree with you, but it does seem to be the new norm, so.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not just these meetings. A lot of organizations that I belong to start their meetings at 5 or 6. And it's just very odd to me.
All right, well, how about 6:30?
Well, if you think 6 work, the problem is, okay, we've discussed this, or you've mentioned it and you were right, that, if we start it early, people just aren't going to get there. So we're going to have the same problem that we had last time, which is we're sitting around waiting for people to show up. And I do not have any kind of a magic ball or anything to tell what's keeping them from showing up when the meeting's supposed to start. But something is keeping people from showing up when the meeting's supposed to start. And some of it is probably they're not home from work yet. Or they had dinner and they're not ready to leave, or, but when the earlier the meeting gets, the longer it seems to take to get the people in the room.
I think people just procrastinate, and we've
Yeah,
already
that's-
seen
that
before,
too.
we don't start right at 7, so, yeah.
That too.
Oh,
So,
what do you think? We
Yeah,
need to-
I think they procrastinate, I agree with that,
Yeah.
they dilly-dally getting in the new one.
Yeah, right. So do you want to say 6 with the intention of actually starting at 6:30? This is what I
I
do
say
with my
6,
dog.
and hopefully you can start at 6.
We have verified with Pentucket that, we can access early enough that Jim and his, registrars could be set up at 5 PM. So they would be, the doors could open at 5, starting time at 6, that would be,
Sounds like a concert, yeah, doors open at 5.
Who's the warm-up band?
can we have music?
All right, so what do we want to do?
To go for 6.
Yeah,
All right, all right.
I think 6 is fine.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to start at 5, though, that seems too early, maybe
Checking in,
5:30.
would,
Huh?
I would let them start checking people in at 5.
Yeah, there's no harm in it.
And let people know, so if you're worried about a backup, get here early, you have the ability.
Yeah, okay.
But Chris, that is a little bit, that's a little bit insensitive to people who do have to go to work. And if you say it like that, like, make sure you get here early or you're gonna miss out, well, that's pretty insensitive to people who don't have a choice.
Early, Ken.
Yeah. All right, so
Some hot articles are first.
that's a decision, right? And then we'll work out the details of which articles and how we do them at a later date.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
Hey.
you're welcome.
Right, minutes?
And it's January 3rd or 23rd.
Rick, did you have anything?
I had a couple things in that, the other one.
Page 179, there it says as well, twice in the same sentence.
Thanks, I was almost there.
You looking for the page?
Yeah, you just, okay, I'm in it now.
Are you doing these correction things?
Yep. Which section?
Okay, 179 FA, halfway down. Says could be put aside as well for page schools future as well.
Okay,
Take
good.
one of those out. I feel like.
I've got on page 178. It's E, capital E, lowercase e. Should say grant application, where it reads, Parker motion to authorize the water department submittal of the grant, it should be the grant application.
Okay, yeah.
And then on page 179, there are two things. First one that I did chuckle at, that's with the library chipping in. We could leave that.
I left it, I saw it, I laughed too.
Do we want to say chipping in, or it says, the select board endorsed dual financing the project of the library chipping in to cover. Could we say contributing instead, or
I
should
think
we
that's-
like it chipping in?
I like.
I want to chip
You
in.
like chipping in, okay.
No,
All right, so what, oh,
I don't like that.
oh, you don't?
I think they should contribute. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to diminish
exactly,
their-
right, exactly, it should contribute, library.
They're not doing us a
contribute.
favor here.
Oh, chip in.
And then, the next one, I think I like, a metal detectorist.
What?
It's a person who runs a metal detector, they're a detector.
They're no longer a metal
Oh.
detectorist.
Detectors. You know what? If he wrote that, I bet it's really a word.
Think so? Okay, we'll go with it. Look, I'm just gonna ask,
Go ask Siri.
yeah, I'm gonna, well, I don't use Siri.
So Angus, on page 180,
Yeah,
it said, read motion to approve 1-step increase for a town employee. That was the 3 employees, right, from
yeah,
the
yeah.
library, so I think that could just be changed.
So I'll say to approve these step increases for town employees,
As proposed by the town manager or something like that.
or, well, it references the January 9th. But I'll confirm the reference.
Okay.
So the Detectors is a British comedy television series.
I knew it.
Okay, but that was plural, so let me just.
All right,
I just-
I make a motion to accept the
Yes.
minutes of January
Second.
23rd as modified.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Uh,
All right, moving on.
so you don't wanna change that?
No, no.
Okay.
February 6th.
Max might have coined a new phrase. We got that in the minutes for the return.
Actually, he's free.
I knew.
It's someone whose hobby is using a metal detector.
Yeah, he's very precise.
Could you Google check in that too, would you?
Max, good job, man.
Max, I knew it all along. I had confidence. All right, item B, C. This is on MBTA. It says that I explained to my colleagues that the select board could comment on the matter of approving. That would be the. Yeah, it sounds like I made the decision, but
No, I think you made the comment that we're gonna be commenting up and not voting.
Yeah.
I
how about if we just, that the select board would comment, instead of could, you just change it to would.
Okay.
It seems like a minor thing, but that was all I had in that. Oh, actually, no. Reggie, on this.
Yeah, well, I didn't get a chance to read it very thoroughly, but I actually just came across something I think ought to be changed. Parker inquired about the rural water sewer line, the rural water line project, and whether upon completion of the project, the lower artichoke would be drained. I think what I said is, could it be drained and dredged? Or could it be dredged? I'm not sure if I don't know my exact.
I would suggest say dredged.
Yeah, it
and
could be
leave the word
dredged,
drained, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah,
that was,
right, yeah, yeah, it would have been dredged. Yeah, it would make sense to me.
All right. Minute?
Rick,
Yeah,
make a motion to accept the minutes of February 6th as amended.
sorry,
All in favor?
all right.
thank you.
All right, the next item is the proposed postcard, which I think looks good.
And you saw the updated draft that Max had sent around, it's substantively the same, but I think the formatting is a little more eye-catching, it pops a little. He jazzed it up.
Did he send it today?
I sent it yesterday by email.
I'm sure I looked at it, but I don't remember.
I can't,
What do you guys think?
That's good. Well, maybe I should look at the other one. What time did you send it, yesterday?
I think it was in the morning.
It's more three-dimensional, you have things laying over each other, it's pretty.
Can you pull it up on the screen, Angus? Or is that-
Yeah, no, I can, yeah.
Lately, I've been in triage mode. Okay, the draft MBTA zoning. Now, there it is.
Oh,
Yeah, substantively the same, it's just got a little more.
Pops, as Max said.
I like to see the dates shape the community
Right.
tagline. I think I prefer the original one more.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I think this draws your attention to want to look at it.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling.
I would say it this way, this is the kind of thing I get in the mail, it probably hits the trash quick. That one, I'm gonna at least to look to see what's on it.
Yep,
Yeah, I actually like this one more.
all right, good.
You're not gonna fight it, huh?
If you have any tweaks in the next,
No,
it's gonna, okay,
That's
but
fine.
yeah, we'll send it to the printer, probably early next week, so if you do. You know,
Yeah.
we can tweak it. But yeah, I thought it was better.
So will we be able to fill in the date for the town meeting and stuff, or,
Sounds like it,
but we don't know what night though?
no, so that's, I mean, the way this is, you know, we'll need to change that to April 28th and 30th.
Yeah.
6 p.m. And I think, unless we want to try to say this is going to definitely come up on Monday or on Wednesday, which if so, I think we should have just the one date, but right now, the way it's written, it puts the burden on someone to still pay attention. This postcard doesn't answer all their questions in terms of like. what
I'm
date.
hoping to put this one on Monday night. I mean, I think it's almost respectful too.
Mhm. We
When does this have to go to?
there's not we want it to get in people's hands far enough ahead of March 18th.
Right, so.
So I think we'd like to send it to the printer next week, but there's not like it's not a legal notice, it's just, and we'll give, you know, we've been in touch with the printer, they know it's coming, so.
So if we finalize the date at our meeting next week, would that be enough time to send it?
Probably, yeah, I'm sure it would.
Because by then you'll have had time to think about the
Yeah,
order of the
warrant.
articles.
We'll talk to Minuteman and let them know that they can expect to receive you know, Friday morning. They could probably have it printed that day.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be it's an easy job for them.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll put this on for, we'll put the date on for the March 6th agenda to pin that down.
Yeah. Jump over something. Item F is draft outreach process for MBTA community zoning proposal.
That's what this is.
Postcard.
Okay, all right. So process for appointment of the West Newbury rep to Whittier.
I did speak more with Tim today. He actually reached out to me on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I told him what I was gonna recommend to the board was that you basically seek to, you know, seek to have the school committee defer to you, but to not push the point of who's the appointing authority, because there are differing legal opinions.
Did you provide the letter to Justin?
Yes.
To provide to his attorney?
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, I did get confirmation from him that he provided their attorney the letters that we had sent.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I heard from Justin on Monday.
I don't know how anybody can read that statement and the regional agreement and not see it.
I know, it's a mystery to me. It's frustrating because that's what I asked for originally and they shut me down and now, so we write the strongly worded letter and now we go back on it. It's just that part of it I don't like.
Yeah, so Justin reached out to me on Monday. He said he spoke to our attorney. I can fill you in, but his point is that the first two sections, ID, the school committee is the body within the municipality that does the appointment. The last sentence in every year after states municipality, but the prior two parts of that paragraph have already identified the school committee as the appointing body within the municipality. Otherwise, the agreement would have had to ID a different governing body to do the appointment, e.g. select board. I think Tim's opinion is better reasoned and better researched, but I just don't know if this is something to go to the mat over.
No, it's just annoying.
I do suspect that part of why Whittier is probably concerned about it is not necessarily to do with West Newbury, but a potential ripple effect on other towns.
Yeah.
Right is right, and wrong is wrong. This, you know,
Is it
Is
worth
there-
sharing Pawtucket's attorney's opinion with Tim just to get his feedback?
Well, I'd like to get Justin's consent to do that. I think I could reasonably share it with Tim.
Okay. All right, how do you guys feel about it? You think we should just hold on this or?
Yeah, I think we should do what is most expeditious and because sometime in the next few years, the whole thing is gonna change anyway. There's gonna be a new agreement and how much time and potentially legal dollars do you wanna spend to resolve something that's gonna, you know, if we can come to an amicable solution where, you know, we advise them who we think it ought to be and they accept that, then that functionally gets the same thing done. And
I guess I would just say, if we're gonna be doing a new agreement, if we have already changed this, and so that's the precedent going into the new agreement, it will be easier to incorporate that, you know,
I think.
I don't know.
Again, I don't have the agreement in front of me, but it talks about when it's initially established and then subsequent amendments. It's very clear. You mean,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Chris, I just.
well, so sit there and then say defer, ask them to defer. That's rolling over playing dead. So, I'm not gonna, if that's what you guys wanna do, that's fine. I just don't think it's right. I'm not sure where the resistance is, other than, as Angus said, the ripple effect, but if, just because you've been doing it wrong for 50 years, doesn't mean when you find that out, you shouldn't correct it. I think that's hiding your head in the sand.
So I don't understand why Kentucky is resisting. I mean, I can get.
No, I mean, for them, it's a pain.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the part that bothers me.
It's one more thing they have to deal with. I don't understand why they, I mean, I would think they'd be begging us to take it. You know, but, yeah, they're not.
So are you both okay if we just get Tim's, or if Justin approves it? Any opinion on Kentucky's? To know if we should push it or not? Or Chris, how do you want to resolve it if you feel like, because I don't feel good about it either, so, but I don't know what the solution is.
Is there resistance from Pentucket and Whittier, or one or the other? Or?
Well, the resist, it's coming from Justin, so.
Well, I think, yeah, Justin's he received an opinion from his attorney, so I don't think he personally cares.
But he's on enlightened this in the first.
Yeah,
right, no, I know,
Yeah.
it's odd. I get the sense both from Whittier and as of today from Tim. No, I get the sense that Whittier, both from Justin and from Tim, that Whittier is actively concerned about this. And is, dug in on the idea that it's the school committee. Why, whether that's to do with us or a ripple effect, but if we
I think they
push
don't
this,
need negative imaging right now,
Mhm.
is what they're probably, right?
But they could get it, depending on how you guys handle it,
It could be a win for them, right?
well, it could be negative if they hold the line, or if they somehow. I think everyone needs to agree on what's the valid process for appointing the member. And right now, I guess, there's disagreement on that, so.
I just find, I read it, not today, but so many times. You look at it, it's so straightforward. I don't understand how it can be interpreted differently.
Is the Pentucket School Committee's next meeting on the 11th?
They have one on the 4th,
Oh, they do.
yeah.
That's right away. I wonder if we could get something on their agenda and raise the profile of it, because who knows if the full school committee is privy to this, or if it's just something the chair is handling.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that I think she's just following Justin's lead. That was my impression.
I could certainly contact Justin and say, we'd like to see this on your agenda Tuesday. And just raise the profile of it and.
Would it not be better to do it with a meeting with Justin and Maureen?
But why does Maureen have anything to do with it?
Yeah, she doesn't have, she shouldn't,
Well,
they should have.
Chair this school committee. I'm thinking that rather than make the public, push first, it might be better to see if there is an agreement as to what it means. I don't know.
All right, so what's the next step then?
Maybe Maureen thinks that we're hostile.
And?
Well, no, maybe that's why. If there is
It could be.
pushback from.
It could be and or a concern that if we went this way and then there was a ripple effect, and for instance, Rowley and the other Triton towns were saying, we're now gonna. do
But what's-
this.
I fully anticipate that would be the
Yeah, but what's the
evolution.
downside of that? To me, that's really
That's the way it should be
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah, so she's protecting
So you've
turf.
answered your
Yeah.
question, you pursue it the right way.
Yeah.
So let's get
All right.
Tim to look at their letter if they can, and then keep moving it forward.
Good.
All right, but I do agree, Chris, I think it'd be better not to be on the school committee yet, if we can try to figure this out. right? Right. Okay. Draft cover letter for the Page School Conditions Report. I'm not sure what you guys had in mind, just took a shot at it here.
That's the entirety of it?
Yeah, just one page. Well, when is the next page?
Yeah, they whittle it down.
No, this is our cover letter for the report that we're sending out, like the PR. Is that right, Angus?
Yeah, and language that we would use in the web post and just to frame the report, so when people read the report, there's something to tell them kind of what it is and what it isn't.
Mhm. All right, Rick.
Wait, no,
What is it that you want to say?
Nothing, I was just.
I didn't look at this kind of side by side with what Elisa had drafted. Did you
Well,
borrow much of what she wrote? Or?
no, because a lot of what she wrote, I felt was finding fault with the report, saying what it didn't do, and I just felt like that was.
that's not what we want to be doing at all.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just a high level view of what they were supposed to do and the results. Are you thinking it should be one page? Because I can whittle it down, Chris.
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, do we want to look at this maybe next time? Seems like we're kind of tapped out tonight.
Yeah, that would be good, and I do think, it would be good to have something about, making clear that these, all these decisions are rest of town meeting, and just to kind of be very overt about that.
About the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a comment about what the process will entail, public meetings and the vote and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Used because it breaks on the 2 pages, but that is funny, the break.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this, footnote, while factual, is something that would be,
Yeah,
people need to, anything's gonna be contingent on, a long process and authority with town meeting and so forth, so.
all right.
But I think I liked how it read. I
Okay,
think
so do you? are you
Yeah,
the
I
appropriate
think
person to-
between now and, next Thursday's packet, I can put together,
Okay,
I can put together some markups and if there's other input from the others
Markups on this current letter.
on the current draft, yeah.
all right, does that sound good? All right,
And then we can revisit also the date, with the information Christine has circulated.
okay. Replacement of informational plaques within the town office building.
Actually, can we just talk about the dates? I mean, the date for the meeting, do we wanna?
Sure.
Does it make sense to, think about that at all now? I mean, sooner it seems to me would be better than later in terms of trying to ground a date.
I think we were looking at after town meeting, right?
Yes.
So.
All right.
Any preferences in here? What night of the week do you think would be the best?
Well, Sunday, definitely.
That's not one of the options.
Yeah.
Angus, do you have any thought about like what night of the week? Is Monday a bad night for this kind of meeting?
I really don't. I mean, obviously we wanna be mindful of kind of standing meetings and not putting it on the regular planning board night or regular school committee night. I think there's certain like blackout dates of entities that we would want there and wouldn't want to assume they're gonna reschedule the regular meeting for this. But short of that, in terms of like public attendance, I don't think Monday, I don't think the 4 nights are better or worse than the other.
So I think even though Wednesdays are open, I mean, we have CPC, open space, well, I guess that's So May 28th, I think.
I do think CPC after town meeting could reasonably skip a month,
True.
like,
That's true.
when you're the chair, you just not post an agenda.
So you're thinking May 14th? I think it could also be the 12th.
You think, so there's no, actually, I've stopped populating my select board meetings, so I apologize for my ignorance here.
The
But
15th,
is there a meeting on the eighth?
May 1st and 15th, nothing on the, nothing on the.
Oh, actually, yeah, it's on here, okay, yeah, so May eighth, there is not, is that,
For some reason Mondays seem odd, I don't
I
know
know,
why.
yes, I feel the same
I
way.
think go for the 13th. Tuesday and Wednesday seem to be.
13th is my birthday,
What is?
yeah,
Can't do that.
the 13th, that. Great.
All right, how about the 14th then?
Yeah.
14th?
14th
Thanks.
looks great.
All right. All right, sounds good.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, the big 5-0, so,
Really?
yeah,
wow, thank you.
Good for you.
held it off this long. But it's coming.
All right, what do we think of Max's signs?
When he refers to ADA compliant, what he's talking about is Braille.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted, because
Yeah,
there's nothing
yeah.
on it, it's like,
Yeah,
I think these are wonderful.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
what are they gonna be made out of, is my question.
Actually, what he's talked about is doing it, really just printing it on like a foam core that could then be like something like low. Oh, no, that's not true. No, that was before before we became aware of the ADA thing, we were thinking of something that we could really do in-house and mount in foam core. It
I'm
would
thinking,
look very
if you're not
nice.
touching it, you gotta worry about where.
Yeah, so, I don't know if, he and I didn't talk about, the materials. Basically, he put this together on his own initiative, and I said, geez, that looks great, let's bring it to the board and see what they think, so,
Yeah, I like it.
it's, you know, I would think, you know, maybe we could, I don't know if you wanna send it to the historical commission, just to make sure
That's a
they're.
good idea.
Because I think that he was very sensitive to where there's a lot of these are existing signs, he's using exactly what's there.
Mhm.
They might, you know, he didn't wanna like,
Take liberty.
you know,
Yeah.
like offend anyone, but if we send him to historical for comment. I can bring it back in a future meeting with more detail on how we fabricated, but I think it's stylistically, I think it's really a nice initiative.
And then if somebody will proof it too, I mean, I read them, but I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna give it, so I found one typo,
Okay,
so whatever it's worth on the third one, page 193. And overall, these are great, I just happened to, well, I was actually reading the text because I was trying to get educated.
Which was the thing?
This is a view of Farm Lane.
Yeah.
Halfway down, this line, the line starts with Haverhill and Newbury.
Okay, good, yeah, all right.
that's why they need to be proof.
Yeah, exactly, I mean, that's just happening.
It's a historical commission too for accuracy and
Yeah, I think
proof
that's.
also.
Okay, so we'll refer these to historical and we'll bring it back at a future meeting in a couple of weeks.
I mean, I don't like to say, I don't know if they're foam core, bronze.
We
wood
had talked
degree.
about foam core initially, and then we reviewed it with Sam, or Max did, and that was when we learned that once you touch it, you have to make it compliant, and that means Braille. So Max was downtrodden, and I said, look, there's gotta be vendors, and so he reached out, and it's actually, he didn't put it in here, but he got the cost is very modest, a few $100, something like that,
Great.
so.
So what budget does that come out?
We put it in either town manager expenses or select board expenses, you know, there's generally enough slack in both of those.
I think it's wonderful that he took it on his own and, you know.
Yeah, it's terrific, yeah.
Okay, next item is, continuation of remote meetings. So, I was hoping Jim doesn't have an update on like what the.
He said it's been crickets, you know,
Okay.
everyone's aware at the legislature that the, you know, authorization expires coming up. He said on all his clerk listservs, there's like, he has no insight as to what's being considered.
So if this does continue and we had strong feelings about, I mean, we don't have any authority to advise or instruct other boards whether to meet remotely or in person, is that correct?
I don't believe you have authority, but I do think you could, I know there's been discussion with the planning board and, the interest in seeing them go back to in-person or hybrid meetings. I think that can certainly be restated and emphasized. Ultimately, as an elected board, I don't think you have authority to compel them, but
I'm sure I do.
I did, I expressed to Wendy, I did take the time to watch the recent planning board meeting, and I found it very difficult to watch, and I thought it was, it's not something that, like, if I was a resident, I wouldn't want to watch another one. And part of it was, I think the way we do it with the hybrid is great, and I think the owl was great. The way they did it, it was just all like one
They just do it.
person after. It was a series of talking heads. There was no sense of a cohesive board. I didn't feel the chair had any meaningful ability to manage either his own board or the conversation. It was really just whoever talks next. I thought it was like very difficult, and not something that is really something that someone who just wants to keep an ear to the ground in their local government would really be enticed to like want to do again and again.
Do they have a reason why they are still doing it?
They think it's more effective, they think it's better public participation because they can show the plans, that's what they said.
But they can do that with hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of people not even involved in town government that are interested have said to me that why are they still meeting, online and,
I really do think you lack the presence of a board.
yeah.
And it was. Yeah, you could watch it yourself and make your, and I think you guys, you've watched planning board meetings.
Yeah, no, the dynamic's totally different too, if you're not, if you're not in the same space. And actually, I just think the communication is different, and I think you get
Think how much fun we would miss tonight if we were fully remote.
Right, that's right. Good, yeah.
Well, the other thing, that was an occasion for a member to recuse themselves, and that's really difficult to manage online, they're not leaving the room,
Right.
Yeah, the Attorney General's guide says, if you were to recuse yourself, you're supposed to physically step down so that it is visually evident. You can still.
You don't have to leave the room.
No, you don't have to leave
We get
the
to the
room.
ADU, I'm gonna say it,
Yeah,
you gotta state the reason, and I'm gonna go sit over there and not
Exactly.
participate.
right, no,
You actually can participate
you
in
can-
the discussion.
you can
but get sued.
participate.
Not gonna-
Well, you can participate, you can, as a resident.
Dicey.
But by physically stepping down, you've sent a clear signal to everyone in the room, you are speaking in your capacity as a resident, not as a board member. And with the online, you don't, even though the member did absolutely say, I'm recused, and later when they did speak, said, I'm speaking as a resident. So the right things were said, but the optics of it is not a meaningful recusal the way that it would be if that person was speaking from the audience.
It recusal difficult even in person, so
Yeah. So do we want to try to do anything about this or just wait and see? I mean, I feel like they'll probably just continue it. People have become so used to it that. Not they meaning the state, not they meaning the planning board.
I think where there's a new town planner, I think it's worth, I don't know how, I don't think we need to write a letter. I don't know if, you could call the chair, I could talk to the planner and just try to put. Just try to implore them. It's really the chair, it's up to the chair.
It would be interesting to understand what the rationale is for continuing to do it. If it were me, I don't think I'd want to do it that way,
Yeah.
to continue to do it that way.
Yeah. I think it's convenient, you don't have to leave the house, but I just don't think it's as impactful,
Yeah.
And I will just restate, I think that as a viewer of the meeting, I think if I was an interested resident, I just found it so painful to watch this thing, like I would have a strong disincentive to like follow what they're doing, whereas if they're hybrid like we are, at least I just think the production value is higher. I did talk to Adam, he's changing his method, because as a viewer, of Zoom, he can change the settings, so even if they're showing it as like talking head, he can change his view to show the gallery.
Oh,
So he is going to do that going forward for planning board meetings,
okay.
so it will be better, than it was that last one. So at least that will change.
Maybe you can set it up with balcony seating for anybody who recuses themselves.
There'll be like a red tile in the bottom corner. All right, so you're just gonna follow with,
Yeah,
Tanner, and if I happen to catch the chair, I can,
good.
all right. Correspondence, yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Has the planning board or Katrina said, but I mean.
I shared it with her when we met earlier this week, but I just kind of summarized it and then gave her a copy. We haven't talked since then. I've since read the, follow-up article that we put in here. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think it changes anything about posture. Because certainly it doesn't implicate, it seems to me the auditor's position is to do with the attorney general's right to sue, not the state's ability to withhold funding. So I don't think it. I don't think even if the auditor's right, I don't see that it has a material impact on posture, but.
It is an unfunded mandate, but the state's done it before, and they don't care, and it does not change, at least for West Newbury.
I
It does
just,
not change anything.
I'm just concerned that residents not in favor of this will seize on this now, like they did on the Milton thing, like we have to wait till this gets resolved.
But it doesn't change the financial piece, and,
Yeah.
I did that updated memo, a few weeks ago. Did I send that to you guys? The updated financial memo?
No.
I think I sent it to the, I think it was part of the packet for the joint meeting. But it was the same one from last April with a list of grants. I worked with Jenny to update.
Oh, the money we lose, yeah, you did send that.
Yeah, that was in the
Significant.
February
In the
12th,
joints. Okay.
packet. And that's posted, I believe it's posted to the MBTA site. It's very significant.
Okay. All right. All right, I move we recess into executive session for MGL chapter 30A, section 21A3 and A6.
Well,
In favor, read aye.
Okay.
So we'll just return to open session to adjourn.